Good evening, race fans. Welcome here to Indianapolis Motor Speedway as the Flatout Racing Network brings you coverage of pole day qualifying for Season 3 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series presented by HyperX. It's for the Indianapolis 500 that will be run this Saturday, but we still got to determine the starting lineup here tonight. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Matthew Rodriguez, and Matt, all these drivers have a set time of when they can head on out there to be able to put down a 4-lap best average. We're looking right now at the 50 of David Leclerc. I don't know. A lot of pressure on the first driver out here. Set the bar for everybody else to try and reach.
To be honest, I think David Leclerc might have the best mentality right now where he doesn't really have to wait. He doesn't have to have those nerves of, man, I'm seeing a lot of these guys go around the track. I don't know if I can really go to the top of the board. David Leclerc is always going to go to the top of the board right now. Now, how qualifying format works here, it is 5 laps these drivers get. They get their initial out lap when they're driving out of pit lane. They get 1 full hot lap around to get up to speed, and then their 4 time laps begin.
So right now, this would be the hot lap you're talking about, as David Leclerc will begin his first timed lap next time around. Again, it's 4-lap average when the timed laps begin, and we will be giving you those averages as they come in during the course of this event. These drivers all are scheduled, as far as right now, for those that are attempting to make their way into the Indianapolis 500 for what's going to be a 3-hour session. So during the course of this time, we'll be able to kind of go inside the head of the drivers, find out how they're feeling heading into their qualifying attempts or just coming off their qualifying attempts. Of course, for all of these drivers here today, it just comes down to 2 things, really. Just hold it wide open and move the steering wheel as little as possible.
Yes, and I'm kind of looking back at David Leclerc's season here, and we've kind of nailed the, I guess, really the horse in the head here, where he has not had the greatest of seasons, and he has been fast, don't get me wrong, but he really hasn't had consistency. He hasn't been finishing these races. He has been running fast, and he's been in the conversation before. It just seems like patience has been the issue.
I think the word that you just said there was the real telltale sign of what David Leclerc has been. That's finishing. He's been really strong in 2/3 of the speedway races that we've had this year, but either there's a mistake that takes place or he gets caught up in an incident in the final third and is just not able to close out the deal. I mean, there's been multiple races that we've looked at him as one of the top 5 fastest drivers out there in contention for that victory, but he just can't seem to be able to get that car in one piece back to the checkered flag.
Don't get me wrong, David Leclerc is fast by all means. He's almost like Eric Peterson in a sorts of, he just can't stay out of trouble.
Gonna come around here. This is, I believe, going to complete his 2nd timed lap. And no correction, this is his 1st timed lap that he's actually about to complete.
And just looking back at last year's Indy 500 results, David Leclerc was one of the first cars out. Obviously had what looks like he was 167 laps down. Easily the first car to exit the race. I think he's looking for a little bit of redemption this year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Actually, it was his 2nd lap that he just put on the board. His 1st lap was a 39.598, 39.671 the following lap, so not that much fall off. Then only 4 thousandths fall off on lap number 3, a 39.675. Now about to put his 4th and final lap on the board. And it is going to clock in at a 39.737. That puts him to start off the day with a 226.870 average mile per hour for those 4 laps.
Absolutely. And just kind of looking here, I kind of go back to what you were talking about, where I'm looking at David Leclerc. That does kind of make me a little bit nervous being the only one on top of the board. And now I'm everyone's benchmark of, hey, listen, this is the first time put down. Now, Seth, you and me, we've experienced this before. As the track gets more rubbered in, there may be a bigger advantage to going later off in the day.
Not only that, but you get just a tiny little bit of cloud cover maybe during your run. Who knows? That could be an extra 2 to 3 miles per hour you could pick up.
Absolutely. And it's really just timing. And that really makes me wonder for some of the guys who have to come in and do their qualifying later in the night around, 11 p.m. Eastern. it really makes me wonder, hey, are we going to have adequate cloud cover, and how worn in the track's going to be with rubber, and then also how hot the track is.
Gary Corley in the 7, now out here on the racetrack. A couple of things you're going to notice during the course of this qualifying session, and then when we get to the Indy 500 this Saturday, are drivers out there maybe with schemes entirely different from what they ran during the course of the season. A big reason for that is most of the season was run with the DW12 cars. These drivers here preparing for this Indy 500 out there in the IR18s. How much of a difference is there between the two cars? Is there some kind of adaptation that has to take place?
Easily, because really the DW12 cars, they're a lot more planted, a lot more downforce in particular. With the IR18, that downforce, yes, it's still there, but I've noticed it's a bit less prevalent. And the car is a little bit more tuned to plowing in the corner rather than kind of being this darty self that the DW12 has become known.
Gary Corley has had a very up and down season in the third season of the Dark Horse IndyCar season. He has really, in some ways, been struggling more so than having success. Is 18th in the point standings. Runs most of the Speedways, I should say, this season. Did run a couple of the road courses, but I believe he might have been the only driver, no, actually one of two drivers that started every race this season that is the lowest in the point standings, 18th overall. And I understand that Indianapolis is not a super speedway, but when you consider the fact of the scenario we got coming into this being the season finale, the championship's already wrapped up with Robert Maleska III, who we will see later on in this qualifying session, it gives guys, I think, like Gary Corley, an opportunity to not only go out there, be able to try and pick up an underdog victory, if you will, in the season finale, but also set the precedent for next season.
Easily, where, listen, you may not have that much stuff to take from this season to next season of, all right, yeah, I wasn't really a factor for the championship. I didn't win that many races, or maybe I didn't win a race. Indy 500 is kind of that equalizer where as long as you have good strategy or at least a little bit of luck, your chances to win this race are pretty great. Now, Seth, I think we've got David Leclerc here on standby if you'd like to talk with him.
We do indeed, as right now he still sits at the top of the board. That first lap for Gary Corley, a little bit slower, almost a full tenth slower than his first lap, 39.682, and then just ran a 39.768 for his second lap. Let's talk with David. Hey David, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you guys. How are you?
We're doing good. Well, man, first man out there, having to kind of set the bar for everybody else. Looked like that car was pretty steady and carried a lot of good speed. How do you feel that lap time's going to hold up?
I don't know how long it's going to hold up. Just depends, I guess. It's respectable time, but I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to put me on the pole.
Now I got to ask David. I mean, obviously, do you think there's a little bit more pressure about going first rather than going near the end of the qualifying run?
Yeah, just because of the kind of the rules that we have, you have to do certain things. You got to get up at a certain time. Just being the first guy through, you don't want to mess up, and everybody else can kind of see what you have to do first by watching you. So, yeah, I was glad I didn't mess things up there and got to the start finish line properly.
Now, David, Matt pointed out during your run about the fact that, you're going out there on a green racetrack, no rubber laid down. There's going to be a lot more rubber laid into the track as these qualifying runs progress. So was it slick out there for you, or did the car kind of hold pretty well there to the racing surface?
It held pretty well, actually. I've been doing a lot of practice, and like everybody else probably too, but I was ready for whatever the car was going to do. So no, but as far as handling, it did really well. As long as you hit your apexes correctly, it's worked out pretty good.
All right. Well, David, congratulations on what looked like a very stellar lap time. We'll look to see if it's able to hold up there and see where you slot in when everybody takes their timed laps based off of the times that they were given. Best of luck to you, and looking forward to seeing if you're going to be up there maybe in the Fast 9.
Hope so. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Let's see if we can take a look here at the next driver that's out there on the track. I believe that is the 23 of Anders Arus. And he is a driver that we have not seen during the course of this season in the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. Going to be making his first start on the season. We are kind of waiting for just a moment for scoring to update. Looks like we're having a little bit of a problem with the lap averages, because if what we're seeing right now on our timing screen is correct, then Gary Corley has managed to break physics. They've got him down with over a 300 mile per hour average lap time, and I'm not sure that all four tires would have stayed 0.519. That's going to be a little bit more than 0.3 of a second slower than the 870 put down by the driver we just talked with, David Leclerc. Anders Arus is actually one of a number of drivers that we did not see during the course of this season that are going to be taking part in this Indianapolis 500. A couple of other names that are going to be in this as well include Polo Hernandez. We're going to be seeing him going out 9th on the list. Henry Bennett will be going out 12th, and also a driver that we're used to seeing here on Flatout Racing Network, but not maybe necessarily in an Indy car, and that's going to be Bronson Stafford. First lap time laid down by Anders Arus. We'll see what it clocks in at in comparison to the 39.598 that David Leclerc put down. Looks like it is a 39.601. So that is 3 1,000 slower than David Leclerc's first lap. It's kind of interesting because I have actually taken part in Indianapolis 500 qualifying sessions before, not on iRacing, but over on the NR 2003 sim. And one thing that I've noticed, a trend that I've noticed, and I'm noticing it here in these lap times as well, is your first lap is always going to be your fastest lap. Second and third laps seem to taper off a little bit, but then you can actually mount a comeback charge on the fourth and final lap. I don't know what it is, if maybe it's a lesser fuel load that the driver has on that fourth and final lap that allows him to be able to pick up just a couple thousandths or maybe hundredths of a second. But there's something about that fourth and final lap that can really be the difference maker. The 3 laps prior to that kind of set the precedent on whether or not you're going to be in contention to try and snag the pole, and then that fourth and final lap is really the deciding factor. Second lap on the board was a 39.613. That was 0.06 faster than Leclerc's second lap, so right now, Anders Arus is trending in the right direction. Third lap just came in, and it is going to be a 39.665, I do believe. We'll double check on confirmation for that. If that's the case, that's going to be a full 100th faster than David Leclerc's third lap. So right now, Anders Arus is trending as the current pole sitter here for the Indianapolis 500. Still going to definitely have to see about some other names that are going to be coming out there, as I believe that was the final lap there for Anders Arus. Still waiting on that third lap time to come in and the fourth lap time, but I'm pretty certain, just based on the lap times that I just saw right there, that Anders is going to be sitting up at the top of our leaderboard. 39.665 was indeed the third lap laid down by Arus, and a 39.670, 6 100ths faster than Leclerc's fourth and final lap, 227.059. The average lap time on those 4 laps for Anders Arus. So great performance there for him. Right now, that sits him top of the board of the 3 drivers that have currently gone out. See if we can talk with Anders Arus, who right now sits P1 on your current leaderboard. Hey, Anders, it's Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got me?
How's it going?
Man, that car looked like it was locked in. You were absolutely flying anywhere from a couple hundredths to even a tenth there on that third lap of that run. That car looks fast, but can it hold up that pole position that it currently holds?
Not sure. I mean, it was a good run. This is actually my first year doing an Indy 500, so I was just happy to get through the qualifying clean, get through it consistent. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I know there's a lot of fast guys coming up, so yeah, hopefully just somewhere. I'm hoping in the top half of the field is kind of my target.
Looking at Kobe Moore out here on the track right now. Anders, I want to ask you from a driver's perspective, is there a line in your head that you kind of visualize when you go into these corners and then sweep it up towards the wall? Or is it kind of figure out what the car does on that first warm-up lap and then go from there?
For me, it's definitely just like a road course. I have my marks and I try to hit them, and a little bit of it, especially on the corner exit, and especially once you get to that fourth time lap. The last two corners, sometimes you feel it starting to get loose a little bit, so maybe there you start to kind of do something not different on exit, but just in terms of the steering lock and that kind of thing. But as far as an ideal lap, yeah, I've got the marks that you want to hit and how you want to attack the corners, and one of my favorite things to do is just get out there and practice by myself. So if you do that enough, you end up with consistent marks to try and hit.
All right, so far of the three drivers that have gone out and taken time, you're the only one that has an average mile per hour up in the 227s. So what's the goal from here? Do you observe the rest of qualifying, see if maybe you want to go out there after everybody's put down a lap time, try and see if you can better it? Or do you think you're pretty much done and have got this time that you want here today?
Honestly, I would love to stay and hang out and watch all qualifying. I actually have to go to work in a half hour, so I'll probably watch a couple more runs, and then I got to take off, unfortunately.
All right, well, congratulations on a flying lap time there, Andrews. Great performance for you. Right now, it's like you might have some competition there with Kobe Morris, so we'll see how that plays out. But good run, and we look forward to seeing where you slot in here in the grid.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I'll see you on Saturday.
Kobe Moore right now is trending in the right direction. First lap time laid down, 39.566. That's 3/100ths faster than David Leclerc, who right now up to that point had the fastest first lap. Second lap, 39.627. Now that one is about 100th slower than Anders Arus. So right now I believe he's got about 300ths in the bank over Arus to try and take that pole position as he'll come around here to put down his third lap time of the day. Kobe Moore has been a driver that's been very consistent during the course of the season. A guy that Matt and I have kind of looked at down the home stretches. Someone we thought we would easily see make his way into victory lane, and I think we're definitely going to be looking at him here in the Indy 500 this Saturday as well. Kobe Moore, 7th in the overall standings. 8 top 5s and 12 top 10s for factory-backed motorsports, as his third lap going to clock in at 39.633, so that's an extra 3/100ths to bank against Anders Arus. Right now, I believe all he has to do is just maintain around a 39.67, and he will be sitting on the top of the board for qualifying so far. Final lap put in, and it is going to be a 16, or I'm sorry, trying to wait and see what it is here. Our telemetry is just a little bit off here based on when they cross the start-finish line to when they pull back to pit road, so the fourth and final lap time, we'll wait and see what it clocks in here, but I do believe this is going to be at the top of the leaderboard. He was trending about 0.2 quicker than Anders Arus before putting down his fourth lap time, which is officially in 39.625. Wow, that is quite a lap time there for him. That is almost nearly 5/100ths faster than Arus had for his fourth and final lap, and that's going to give Kobe Moore a 4-lap average of 227.2 miles per hour, and that is going to put him first on the board as we look at the defending champion of the series, Nick de Groot, heading on out there. Nick de Groot, ended up seeing him go to victory lane for the second time this season last week at the 2-mile speedway of Michigan. Take a look here of the drivers that have gone out there and taken time. Kobe Moore currently at the top. Anders Arus in second, David Leclerc and Gary Corley. Those are the 4 drivers that have taken time. We're waiting to see where Nick de Groot is going to slot in. Nick de Groot had 5 victories, if I recall correctly, back in Season 2 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series, going on to win that championship. 2 victories this season, and make that third rather, in the overall point standings. Only 8 points out of second place, currently held by Alexander Van de Sant. And Nick DeGroot from last season as well. Flatout Racing Network began its coverage of Dark Horse IndyCar Series back at their season finale in the 500, and Nick DeGroot was a big-time player in that race. So expecting that he is going to be so again this season. Trying to pick up his 3rd win on the year. He and Robert Malezica III actually are the only 2 drivers this season that have gone to victory lane multiple times. We've had quite a number of one-time winners this year, including Alex Van de Sant, Eric Schaus, Charles Teed, Matt Wagner, and Pablo Diaz-Francis. Nick DeGroot has put down his first lap time. We're still waiting for that to clock in. Every single one of these drivers, 33 in total, are going to get to go out there, put down their 4-lap average, and as we were talking just moments ago there with Andre Arus, they are then afterwards, once all 33 drivers that are registered have taken time, drivers that think that they might be able to better their lap time and better their starting track position can go out there and try once again. However, if they go out there and they run slower, the lap time that they set down previously would be completely wiped out. 39.558 is going to be the first lap time laid down there by Nick DeGroot. That's going to be the fastest first lap so far of the 5 drivers that have gone out. It's about 8 1,000ths quicker than Covey Moore's first lap. 39.579 for his second lap time. First and only driver so far to run in the 39.5s on lap number 2. Covey Moore's fastest lap, or actually make that Anders Arus' fastest lap on lap number 2 was a 39.613. So Nick DeGroot right now looks like he could be trending somewhere in the 227.4, maybe 227.5 in terms of his average lap time. So across the stripe, and we'll lay down a 39.612 for his third lap time here. So first lap, lap 3, where he trends outside of the 39.5s. That is still, however, the fastest third lap laid down by any driver so far. And if he can kind of maintain this pace, he's going to be somewhere in the 227.3 mile per hour 4-lap average. Let's see what he gets here on his 4th and final lap. $39.631 it looks like on our end. We'll wait for confirmation on the other side and see if that is the case. If that is what he actually ran, then that is going to be, what, almost 0.3 faster than anybody else on lap 4? We'll wait for confirmation. But that looked like that might have been the money lap right there, and that could be the ICER lap. I mean, he's only the 5th guy out there is Nick DeGroot. He might have already set the bar so high that nobody's going to be able to reach it. We'll see, as we're just currently waiting for that 4th and final lap time to come in. The next driver that's going to be pulling out there is going to be Eric Schaus, I do believe. He is the next driver scheduled. Now, there are a couple of drivers that will be starting at the rear of the field for the Indy 500. They'll be forfeiting their lap times here today. A couple that I do know will not be taking time will be Joe McAdory and Gail Brooks. We'll have to see if there's anybody else that also will not be laying down lap times here today. I'm actually currently not seeing Eric Schaus on our grid, so we'll have to see if he is going to be passed over for Corey Lane. These drivers were all given a set time here today to be able to put down their qualifying laps, but if they end up showing later on, they may end up being able to put down their first lap times after all 33 drivers scheduled are out there on the track. 4th and final lap put in, 39.630 for Nick DeGroot. That puts him top of the board with an average lap time on his 4 laps of 227.303 miles per hour. as we're currently waiting to see if indeed Corey Lane in the 10 might be the next driver to head on out there to put down his lap time. Let's talk with the guy that just set down the fastest 4-lap average so far, Nick DeGroot. Hey, Nick, it's Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got me?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Well, we kind of knew that it was trending in the right direction when we saw you be able to put down almost a 39.5 flat on the first lap, and then just after that, you were setting the record lap time so far of the 5 drivers out there. 2:27.303 so far, your 4-lap average. That a pole lap that you just put together?
Ooh, this is a very talented field, so I'm not sure it's going to be good enough for a pole. I feel like I left a little bit out there, but my main goal was just to keep those 4 laps tight together. If I could keep them all within a tenth of each other, I knew that would be probably a top 5 time, and I was able to do that. I think there was only like 800 between all 4 laps, so yeah, it was pretty smooth. But man, this setup, you're right down into the track, so I didn't expect that. I could have definitely got a little more out of it, but yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm just glad I didn't get down below that white line and spin it.
Now, Nick, last season in Indy 500, you almost pulled off that victory, almost got to kiss the yard of bricks, led the race high 94 laps, and had a photo finish there with the eventual winner, Sir Craig Forsyth. You know, a lot of people might not put a whole lot of store into qualifying for an Indy 500, but how important is it for you to make sure you've got that good starting track position?
Oh, in the IR18, especially now with the new tire model, it's very important, more important than it's ever been. So I very much want to keep this car near the front of the field, and the best way to do that is to start at the front of the field. So I think qualifying is going to be it's not paramount. You can win from the back, but you're just going to make things a lot more harder for yourself. So I put a lot of stock in qualifying, especially this year with this car and this tire model. It's going to be very important.
You're coming off the momentum of your second win of the season last week at Michigan. Does that momentum help carry over here in Indianapolis, or does the momentum even come into play when you're at a track that kind of has so much on the line as a, kind of a special event like this?
Just from a mental standpoint, definitely gives you a little more confidence, puts you in a better mood. And we had a good run there at Pocono too, and I was really looking forward to this final leg of the season with all 3 of these tracks. And after the disappointment of Pocono, racing that with the victory at Michigan, it's got me really pumped for Indy. Just want to continue that high and end this season on a high note. And we're still racing for something too. Want to get factory back second in the team standings, and I want to try to nab Alex for second in the driver standings. We're real close together entering the finale.
Obviously, the 5th driver out there, the track's starting to get rubbered in, so are we going to be observing the rest of qualifying here and maybe going out there trying to see if you can better your lap time, better your track position, depending on when everybody goes out there and sets down their lap times, where you end up slotting in, or are you pretty comfortable with the lap time you put down here?
I'm going to keep an eye on it. If this keeps me inside the top 5, I'm not going to risk it, but if I start falling back, if some people really start putting down some lap times, then I'll probably go back out there and you'll see me again.
All right, well, Nick, best of luck. Looked like that car was really good there, so we'll see if it's able to hold up there on the top of the board.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Hope it does.
Corey Lane in the 10 is indeed going to be the next driver going out, so Eric Schaus, his time slot passed by. We'll see if he will be showing up later on to be able to put down a 4-lap average here at Indianapolis. The Corey Lane heading on out here, the 6th driver that will be taking time here today. Corey Lane has only made 3 starts this season, and he has not finished in the top 10 in any of the starts that he made, finishing 15th in the season opener at Auto Club, 33rd with the DNF at Iowa, and then 28th at Atlanta. So trying to make this Indianapolis 500, trying to put down the best possible lap time. You can start to see the track is rubbering in a little bit there. You can see a dark gray line forming from the inside up to about the middle groove. Most drivers using that middle groove, the upper area of the dark gray edge, to be able to get a little bit more speed through the corners to translate to that straightaway speed onto the front stretch to the brick start-finish line. So Corey Lane on the clock right now. Take a look here at your current drivers that have taken time. Nick DeGroot at the top. We were shocked when Anders Arus was able to put himself up in the 2:27 average mile per hour lap time, and now Kobe Moore and Nick DeGroot have gone out and done just the same. So far, the bar has been set, and it keeps getting higher and higher with each driver that goes out there. Talked about last season's Indianapolis 500 right there with Nick DeGroot. Nick, as mentioned, led 94 laps of the 200 that they ran. And he came up just 52 one-thousandths of a second short of getting Craig Forsyth for that victory. I believe, actually, the race ended under the yellow flag, if I recall. Craig Forsyth made a four-wide move up the front straightaway just before the caution came out that ended that race. But Nick DeGroot, as we saw last season, likes to spend most of that race up at the front of the field. And obviously, every driver would like to be able to do that. That's usually where you're able to stay out of trouble the most. Don't want to be back in the eye of the storm. Corey Lane's first lap time going to be a 39.616. Right now, that trends the second slowest lap time on the first lap, 39.641 for his second lap time. That again trends I believe that is the third slowest of the drivers that have gone out. Right now, he is trending to be in the third position behind Nick DeGroot and Covey Moore. Third lap time about to be completed. 39.644. And that puts him right on the edge, just barely above Anders Arus. He's got to find himself a lap time somewhere in the 39.67 range to be able to hold on to third place. If he falls even 100th slower than Anders Arus' fourth and final lap, he's going to drop from third down to fourth of the drivers that have gone out there and taken time. To the stripe, 39.7 flat. That is not going to keep him up inside of the top three. That will slot him more than likely fourth place of the 6 drivers that have gone out and taken time. We'll see what the official lap time is going to be. I'm going to guess somewhere in the high 226s. Might stay around a 227 flat, but we'll have to wait on that. As it looks like our Iowa winner, Charles Teed, is going to be up next. And we found out that Charles Teed is actually going to forfeit his spot in the current timed grid. He will be going out putting his lap times together later on, as he is currently at work. Lap time finally is in, and the average is going to be a high 226, 226.988 for Corey Lane. Right now, fourth on the grid. So leapfrogging Charles Teed will now put Polo Hernandez out on the racetrack in the 0-1 machine. Polo Hernandez making his first start on the season. Going to be interesting to see how a lot of these one-off drivers, if you will, are going to stack up against drivers that have raced every single race so far this season. I believe we've got Corey Lane here on standby to talk with us, currently sitting fourth on the board. Hey, Corey, it's Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got me? Well, looks like we might not have Corey just at the moment. We'll see if we can talk with him in just a little bit here. Might currently be AFK, and we will certainly see if we can talk with him, as lap times were looking good. They just started trending the wrong way on laps 3 and 4. Almost was able to be the fourth driver up there in the 227s. He missed out on a 227 lap time by 12 one-thousandths of a second. Oh yeah, we're going to be talking about hundreds and thousands here today. They are going to be very close 4-lap averages during the course of this entire qualifying session. And I guarantee you a pole position here today is going to be won by a lap time thousandths ahead of second place. It's literally going to come down to that close. It's just like super speedway racing. You just hold the wheel as perfectly steady as you possibly can and hold that throttle wide open. Here's on board with Polo Hernandez. See how very little movement there is with the race wheel. Tries to keep it as straight as possible down the front straightaway. And watch going into turn one. Watch how little movement there is. You're not turning the car into the corner. You are guiding the car into the corner. Just trying to point the nose and then let the car do the rest of the work. Now there are rumble strips down there on the inside. They're more of a guideline. You don't use them to be able to help you around the corner because they are slick. Preferably, you don't really even want to get your left sides down there on that white line. That paint actually has a very little bit of lack of grip and could get your car very squirrely. So you want to kind of just straddle it as best you can. Be as close as you can to that white line without actually touching it. Polo Hernandez first lap time going to be a 39.607. Second lap in is a 39.609. Right now, he is trending second on the board. Right now, a 227.227. That's a lot of 2s and 7s that I'm looking at right there. And he's got to pick it up just a little bit here if he's going to be able to edge Nick DeGroot, who right now is the only driver up there in the 227 threes. Well, Matt, you talked about that the track's going to rubber in, these drivers are going to find a little bit more grip, and these lap times are going to get faster. We are definitely seeing that kind of a trend. It's kind of hard to be able to tell, though, whether it's the track that's allowing these cars to go faster, or if we're just kind of going up there in terms of caliber of driver that's able to hold the wheel a little bit steadier.
See, that's kind of a subjective kind of idea there, because, again, we know Miletska, or more like, we know next driver up would be Miletska, or I believe Miletska, yes. We know Miletska's fast, but we don't know if the track's going to hold that same amount of grip. And same thing with Hernandez here. Hernandez is fast, but just kind of comparing him back to David Leclerc, those times don't look quite that much different.
Not really. It is going to slot him, however, third fastest. He got a little bit slower there on those final two laps. A 39.637 for lap number 3, 39.656 for lap number 4. So not only does he not get Nick DeGroot for the pole position, he's actually going to be behind Covey Moore as well. Average is out at 227.166 for Polo Hernandez in that 0-1 machine. And you mentioned him next out there on the track. Time winner, and we can call him champion. He will be crowned the champion of Season 3 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series this coming Saturday when the checkered flag waves at the Brickyard. Robert Miletska III has had a career year, but he'd love to have that cherry on top with an Indy 500 win.
Absolutely, and that's the kind of the trifecta of, yeah, you've won over 10 races this season. I believe it either is 10 or above 10 races this season, and that's kind of your cherry on top, but you want to put right on your kind of board here of, hey, yeah, I won the championship and the Indy 500. I mean, we saw last season where he just was not able to pull that off. So, actually, my apologies. It doesn't look like Miletska ran the last Indy 500. My apologies.
Run down the tracks that he won at this season. Road America, Texas, Twin Ring Motegi, Circuit of the Americas, Worldwide Technology, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, Kentucky, the Milwaukee Mile, Homestead, Miami, and then the final road course stop of the season at Silverstone. I mean, so many different diverse tracks that he was able to go to victory lane at, which kind of, a lot of times drivers they'll be in a one-trick pony kind of category. If I'm good at the super speedways, I'm good at the road courses, but he's good everywhere he goes.
See, that's kind of what scares a lot of these drivers, that there's no track that you can really pinpoint saying, yeah, he's going to be weak on this track. This is what I really need to specialize in to try and see if I can gain some ground on him. And that's what really the top contenders in the points this season had to deal with, where they couldn't just say, well, road courses don't seem like a strong suit, so let me aim my practice towards road courses, see if we can really gain some ground on the points on him. I mean, really, the speedways were, I almost want to say, his Achilles heel, but he proved later in the season that really wasn't going to slow him down.
I'm not mistaken, I think the only race where he really struggled and didn't exactly get a high performance result was back at Phoenix. Other than that, he would either finish in the top 10, top 5 if he didn't find victory lane.
Absolutely. And I mean, just kind of looking at the top, really 8 in standings here, we kind of easily see that Covey Moore is kind of, I mean, you were kind of talking about it where the track seems to be getting faster, but obviously it kind of goes into the strengths of Covey Moore has been one of the faster cars of this season. We're just kind of going off and looking where Eric Schaus, my apologies, Gary Corley was one of the slower cars of this season. So I can kind of see the disparity between the two.
Let's see if he continues to trend in the direction he is going. First lap, 39.472 for Robert Mileska III. Right now, that has him on pace with nearly a 228 flat 4-lap average. We'll see if he can keep that pace going. We know that the lap times taper off when you get into the second, third, and final lap. We'll see, though, if he can be the first driver to break the 228 mile per hour barrier.
Absolutely, and it looks like we might have Polo Hernandez here if you'd like to speak with him.
Let's dial him up.
Let's see if I can grab him here.
Hey, Polo, you got us up here? It's Matt and Seth in the upper end booth. Looks like
You're not on the wrong channel.
Oh, I think we got him. All right, we got you, Polo. Man, good lap time out there. 227.116 currently has you sitting unofficially third on the board. How did the car feel out there? And is there anything that you might be able to improve on? Might want to go out there and put down another lap time later on tonight?
Well, the first thing that I never tried this set because I was on vacation and I was in my house, so I didn't have any time to try the set and you know all this thing. And I just went down to the qualify, and it is kind of loose. But if I would had the time to practice more, I think I would have improved the time really, really well. But you know, Malexia has done a very great time.
Now, Polo, I'm just kind of looking here and looking at the times, it seems like the track is steadily getting faster. So do you think it'd be a little bit more of an aid to go out maybe after all the scheduled qualifying is done to invalidate your lap and do one more lap around the track?
Yeah. The track is getting faster. It really is.
All right, well, we'll let you go there, Polo. Good first lap, though. Nice job of getting out there inside the 227s. So only one of 5 drivers so far have been able to put themselves in the 227s. And we'll look forward to seeing what you can do maybe to improve on that later on.
Yeah, thank you.
And we heard Polo say that Mileska put down a lap time. Well, Nick DeGroot, before the 91 went out there, had a 227.3. Mileska clocks in with a 227.6, a 6.61. So you talk about setting the bar. I think Mileska just did that.
Absolutely, and that's the kind of thing where obviously you knew he was going to put out a fast lap, but you just didn't know how fast of a lap. I'd be kind of curious to see if that would stay over the next few guys who come out, even with the track getting faster. I'd be kind of curious.
We know that Jim Herrick is fast. He's now pulling off of pit road, and there's a guy coming after him that I'm going to be very interested to see how he stacks up as well. A driver that I've seen in other Indy 500s and other leagues, and a little bit of a tidbit that we know, and we will let you guys know once he gets out there on the track momentarily as well. But Jim Herrick in the 57, he's going to be closing out the season running every race so far this year. 11th in the point standings, 2 top 5s and 9 top 10s. A really interesting thing about Jim Herrick is at the road courses, he always seemed to be one of those guys that would sneak up there into the top 5 in the closing stages, had some really good numbers at the left and right-handers.
True, but he also had a good bit of bad luck where kind of really just he'd get taken out in races that he was running good in, maybe he was running midfield. Like Homestead was one of the occasions. Las Vegas Oval, one of those tracks that really just he didn't like. Same thing of Texas Oval. Just got caught in an incident that really wasn't of his own design.
So Herrick is about to come around, put down his first lap time of the day. Right now, Maleska III holds the fastest lap on lap 1, 39.472. And really, too, if you kind of think about it, it's that first lap that's really going to determine where you're going to slot in, because it kind of sets the precedent. We know the lap times are going to taper off a little bit the longer that the run goes on. So if you don't get that banger first lap, it's just going to continue to trend in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. That's the thing where you also want to be careful to take a little bit of kind of wear on your tires with a grain of salt here, because again, these tires really have to last 4 laps of their optimum performance, where it's not like a normal kind of qualifying session where you do 2 laps and it's as hard as possible. No. And here's the thing, if you really go all out in your first 2 laps, you may notice that you're kind of overheated your tire for the final 2.
So is that why we see those lap times taper off? It's the tire heat building up in the Firestones?
Absolutely. It just, as more heat builds up, less grip it has. It starts to get a little bit overheated on that right front. I mean, look, this is relatively a flat track, so when they enter these corners, they're putting a lot of weight, a lot of pressure. About 230 miles an hour we're putting on that right front tire.
Jim Herrick's first lap time, a 39.544. Now, while that is not in the 39.4s that Maleska III put down, that is, however, the second fastest lap time in lap number 1 of all the drivers that have gone out there. So right now, he is trending P2 if he can continue to hold this pace.
Absolutely. Let me just go ahead and see if we have... I might be incorrect. Yes, we do have Maleska here, if you'd like to speak with him.
All right, let's see if we could talk with the 10-time winner. And currently at the top of the board, Robert, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you guys.
Man, I mean, we were looking there at the 227.3 that the group put down, then you bested by over 0.3 of a second, so we know you're fast wherever you bring that 91 machine to, but man, that thing looked like it was on rails. Is that a pole-setting qualifying lap, or do you think you can improve on that later on?
I don't think it is. I think Henry's will probably get me. I think he's probably done more practice, but I've been cranking out Indy fixed qualifying all day, so I have a lot of laps at this track. So yeah, but I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping, at least front row. I'd take that.
So I've got to ask, I mean, would an Indy 500 win kind of cap off your season here?
Yeah, it'd be great. That's the crown jewel. So if I can make it, 12 wins in a row, I think that's 2/3 of the season. So that'd be great to do.
I mean, does it kind of change the mentality coming into this race, knowing that you've got the championship locked up, that maybe you'll be a little bit more aggressive here, trying to win this Indy 500 than you might if it were a close points battle coming down the stretch?
I don't think so. I mean, this is my first league I've ever ran, so I've never been in a close points battle per se, but I'm just going to do, what I do, be patient, start of the race, first 2/3 of it, and then attack the latter half of the race.
All right, Robert, well, we'll let you go. Congrats on currently still sitting at the top of the board. We'll look to see if that's going to hold up, or if you might have to go out there, see if you can make a second run for that pole position.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Jim Herrick just clocked in his 4th and final lap, and his first 2 laps were looking really good, but it really fell off on the 3rd and 4th lap. That 4th lap was a killer. It's going to put him with a 227.194 average lap time, and that's going to slot him 4th on the board. That last lap in particular, I think, dropped him from 2nd down to 4th of the drivers that have gone out and taken time.
See, and that's the difficult part of, listen, really Herrick did go all out, and he did put down 2 really fast laps, but just like you said, that last 2 laps really fell off, and I think I was just kind of abusing the tire. But you got to remember, as this track gets more rubbered in and the cars start going a bit faster, that's even more wear that's being put on that right front. So that's what I'm kind of looking at of some of these drivers. I'm seeing these times, yes, up front they're looking good, but I expect them to back off a lot more.
Now, one thing that I've noticed that's kind of remained constant of the 9 drivers that have so far gone out there and taken time, yes, track conditions have been changing in terms of the rubber that's laid down, but in terms of the weather conditions, everything has pretty much stayed the same. There's been very little cloud cover. The sun has been beating on this track since we started. So in terms of that, it's been the one great equalizer for everyone that's gone out and set down a lap time so far.
Absolutely, and it's just kind of kept people. I almost want to say it's kept them honest, almost, because obviously when you're going out for qualifying, when you're doing your 4 laps, you're digging for all you can get. There's obviously a little bit of boundaries here, because Seth, we're a little bit more used to the cup car variety, at least a little bit of NASCAR stock car here, and that you're trying to get as close to that grass without hitting it as possible. But with these Indy cars, when you really kind of dip your tires below that white line there, the back end will start to kind of act up a little bit, and when you get a little bit more worn tires, you can find yourself snapping around extremely easily.
And obviously the drivers have to feel that in the race cars as well. Any little slip up they know is going to cost them thousands, even hundreds of a second, as Henry Bennett is out here on the racetrack. We're going to talk about him in just a moment, but I believe we've got Jim Herrick on standby, who just set down a lap time.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and pull him in here. Oh, well, I thought I'd put him in here. My apologies. He is quite elusive, quite fast.
Hey, Jim, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you. How you doing?
Doing good, man. It was looking like that car was slotting itself into the second position, but we saw in the third, and especially that fourth lap, the lap time really tapered off. We were just talking about here the fact that a driver can feel when the car steps out or when the car doesn't do exactly what you want it to do, and a driver's able to know that he's going to lose a little bit of mile per hour. Were you able to feel that on that fourth lap, and what was it that caused that lap time to be somewhat slower?
Yeah, I started to feel it a little bit on the third lap. And basically my problem was I don't think I was aggressive enough moving the weight jacker back for that third and especially the fourth lap. I should have put a little more weight back on the back end to keep it from stepping out. And that's what happened, especially on that fourth lap. I think it was and the end of turn one, it just it wanted to go out a little bit in the back end, and that cost me some speed. I could feel it.
Now, I've got to ask, you're kind of mentioning about messing around with the weight jacker and everything. I've got to ask, how much do those in-car adjustments really help on a qualifying run as opposed to a race?
Well, you can make a lot of difference in how the car handles with it. So if you don't have the balance that you need, you're going to slide a little bit and lose that little bit of time, either at the front end or the back end. Because the qualifying setups have so little fuel on them, as the fuel burns down, you're burning essentially 100% of your fuel load in just 5 or 5.5 laps. So you will feel quite a bit of difference. And if you don't keep up with it by moving the weight jacker back, it'll bite you.
Sorry for putting you on the spot there.
No worries.
Yeah, Jim, talking about that adjustment in the car, do you think that if you go out there and make a second run later on tonight, that you might be adjusting that car a little bit more, or do you think you'd keep it the way it is and see what the car does once the track's rubbered in a lot more with more drivers going out and laying down lap times?
Yeah, that's kind of something I'll have to adjust on the fly. To be honest, I'm not sure I'm going to try a second attempt. I guess we'll have to see where we shake out after everybody goes the first time. But I was only actually about 100th, maybe 15 off of my best practice time. So I'm not all too disappointed in that, even though I know I gave up a little speed on that last lap. Getting it just perfect is pretty tough. So we'll have to see what the reward is going to be to try a second attempt before we decide if we're going to do that.
All right, Jim. Well, right now, sitting unofficially 5th on the board of the drivers who have gone out and laid down lap times, up there handily in the 227 mile per hour 4-lap average. So congratulations, and we look forward to seeing where you stack up, and of course to see if you do make the decision to keep the lap time where it is or go out there and try and improve. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
We're looking here at Henry Bennett, and as you can see with our side-by-side, he is top of the board. Now, why I found this run interesting is when Maleska put down his lap time, there was only one driver I could think of that might be able to give him a run for his money, and even Robert mentioned that he was wondering where Henry was going to stack up to him, because Henry Bennett is the one that puts together the setups week after week for the Dark Horse IndyCar Series drivers to run. So if you talk about someone that's put in the work and put in the laps, look no further than the driver of the 007.
And I can understand definitely why that would make him a little bit more anxious, because again, it's not saying that it really caters the setup exactly to Henry, but Henry knows his car inside and out to make these setups. So obviously he's going to have at least a little bit of an advantage with weight jacker and being able to kind of mess with the car settings, at least in car, to get that car to work a little bit better for him.
Well, it came down to thousandths between the two of them on the first 2 laps. Bennett 2 1,000ths faster on lap 1, 1 1,000th slower on lap 2. Laps 3 and 4 were the difference maker, though, as those two totaled out to about 34 hundredths that Bennett was slower, and so he's going to clock in second with a 222.626, about 4 100ths below Robert Maleska's 661.
I'm kind of in that same boat where, yeah, that's fast, but I can easily see in about an hour. And so that being kind of not so quick, almost maybe top 15-ish kind of quick.
We just saw there, the next driver going out, J.W. Miller, a little bit of an issue coming off of pit lane. Looked like he may have spun the car around there on exit. You talk about how little banking there is in the corners for these drivers. I mean, these aprons, these access roads are completely flat, and we know that the track has some very slick conditions here with the sun beating down on it all day long, but you can't reset. You gotta get the car going again and try and get that thing up to speed as best as possible coming around to the start-finish line.
I mean, that kind of lets me know the kind of gauge of his experience here. I mean, there's 2 specific bumps here on pit road that most every driver knows. Obviously, when you're entering pit road here, there's a bump on the entrance of pit road. And if you're not prepared and if you're kind of going in there a little bit hot, you could hit those bumps that unsettles the car, spins it on around in the entrance of pit road. There's a second bump on the exit of pit road, and that's what J.W. Miller hit. And that kind of hits me as he might not be totally comfortable with his car and totally comfortable with his track, but also it kind of gives me a little bit of an insight to what adjustments he currently has in that car, making it a little bit looser.
Now we gotta wait and see what's gonna happen here. You just saw that J.W. Miller went back to pit road, aborting at least that qualifying lap. I don't know if he's going to have to wait until the remainder of the drivers go out there before he can actually put down his first official 4-lap average, or if he's going to be able to go out there and do a redo right now. We'll have to follow up on that, but obviously the first time that we're going to be dealing with an aborted qualifying run so far today.
That's the thing where it kind of puts him in a very complicated situation here where, yes, it invalidates your current run, and it most likely will invalidate his run here for about the next hour or so. But I almost want to say he was going to end up running a second run anyway when the track got more rubbered in, so I don't know if it's that much of a loss.
Looks like we're going to have a few drivers, at least for this point in time, that are not going to be putting down some lap times here. We just saw J.W. Miller. I believe indeed his lap time has been aborted. He will have to wait until later on to be able to put down his official 4-lap average. Jimmy Drynan would be up next. We currently do not have him in the server. A.J. Hobson would be next in line for him, or for that next spot, and I'm not seeing him in the server. As a matter of fact, right now, I got to go down the list quite a bit here, maybe to Eric Peterson, who right now is 22nd on our list. I mean, that's a long ways down. Obviously, there is about 5 minutes in between each qualifying effort, so we more than likely will see a couple of the names next on the list popping into the server momentarily. But as for the moment here, we're waiting to see who the next driver officially will be that gets out there on the track.
Now I think is maybe a good time to kind of tell you what these drivers will be experiencing when they actually go for the race for Indy 500. Now you've seen all these drivers really kind of go flat out through all of these corners here at the moment. But what you're going to be noticing later on is some of these drivers kind of, at least in draft during race pace, having to let off because the car will just become so tight in the draft that you really can't hold it full throttle.
Another thing too, especially here at Indianapolis with that low banking, if you're going to make a move on somebody, you're going to want to make it from the exit of the corner to maybe halfway down these long straightaways. If you make that move late, it's going to catch the driver you're passing by surprise. They may not give you the room necessary going into these rather shallow corners, and that's usually where we end up seeing the high voltage wrecks take place.
Absolutely. And another kind of concern with wrecks per se is the IR18 utilizes iRacing's new damage model. So when one of these cars hit the wall, the tires, the tires are forfeit with the suspension as well. If you hit one of these walls about 200, you're easily going to break off the suspension on the right side, and that's going to easily take a fast repair out of you.
We're still waiting on Jimmy Drynan. He's the next driver that should be going out there taking a lap time. AJ Hobson is in the server, so he will be going out within the next 5 minutes or so. So we're going to actually step aside for a quick commercial break. We'll be back here for when AJ Hobson takes to the track to continue on pole day qualifying for the Dark Horse IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500 presented by HyperX. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in just a few moments.
It's a road few dare to travel, a journey filled with danger and unpredictability. So why do we traverse this road? Why do we take such a gamble? Because if we don't try, we'll never know what we could have achieved. That's why we strap in, rev up, and fix our focus on the ultimate prize. Because the reward is well worth the risk. The 2021 NNSCRA Daytona 500, Saturday, February 20th, exclusively on Flatout Racing Network.
ETE Reman is the world's best remanufacturer of transmissions for import and domestic cars and trucks. Based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, our customers are repair shops, auto parts stores, dealerships, and distributors. And with 6 nationwide warehouses, we're where and when you need us. So when you're looking for a transmission that is like new, only better, instill confidence and install ETE Reman.
It's a road few dare to travel, a journey filled with danger and unpredictability. So why do we traverse this road? Why do we take such a gamble? Because if we don't try, we'll never know what we could have achieved. That's why we strap in, rev up, and fix our focus on the ultimate prize. Because the reward is well worth the risk. The 2021 NNSCRA Daytona 500, Saturday, February 20th, exclusively on Flatout Racing Network.
ETE Reman is the world's best remanufacturer of transmissions for import and domestic cars and trucks. Based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, our customers are repair shops, auto parts stores, dealerships, and distributors. And with 6 nationwide warehouses, we're where and when you need us. So when you're looking for a transmission that is like new, only better, instill confidence and install ETE Reman.
all-day qualifying commences here, or continues on, that is, for the Dark Horse IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500. AJ Hobson now out on the track in the number 63, coming off a really good run last week at Michigan, finished up inside of the top 5 in that race, and he's going to be the, I believe, 11th driver that will go out there and put down a lap time. Now, we just talked with race officials about the situation of J.W. Miller, who did not put down a lap time. And Matt, I think you've got the details on that one.
Absolutely. By rulebook, the drivers have 60 seconds from the exit of pit lane to the start-finish line to begin their lap. It looks like J.W. Miller was about 5 seconds over that 60-second time limit, so when he crossed the line, his attempt was invalidated. So that means he must wait until after all the current scheduled participants to re-begin his lap.
AJ Hobson, 2 top 5s during the course of this season. 4th place at Phoenix, a 5th place at Gateway. And he has run 12 of the 15 races so far this season.
Just kind of looking at AJ Hobson's kind of season here. I almost want to say it's been a story of ups and downs, but it hasn't been the extremes ups and downs that we've seen out of some drivers where, listen, the downs are, 20th, 25th, but the highs are anywhere from 5th to 9th. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those consistent kind of seasons for AJ.
Bring up your side-by-side here and take a look at so far who currently sits top of the board. It's Robert Maliska III with a 227.661. That is a 4-lap average that he has set down. Henry Bennett right behind him with a 227.626. AJ Hobson right now, as you can see, trending 3rd on the board. We'll see if he can keep it there ahead of Nick DeGroot and Covey Moore. Right now, that's your unofficial top 5. 11 drivers at this point, including Hobson, putting down lap time so far. Still a long ways to go, including the defending Indianapolis 500 winner, who will be rolling off in the next couple of entries, Craig Forsyth. It's going to be interesting to see with him because, Forsyth, if you go back to last year, he started 4th in the Indy 500. He only led 7 laps, but he led that most important one, the final one.
Absolutely. There is one guy that I've kind of got on my radar, but I've got circled here. It has to be Matt Wagner. He was the one who got the pole for the Indy 500 last season. Didn't have that great of a showing. Actually finished 1 position behind our current runner, AJ Hobson, in 11th. But I'm thinking Wagner may be able to pull it off back-to-back.
And Matt Wagner actually ran really well at the bigger speedways that we had this season as well. Of course, took that victory in the season opener at Auto Club, had the runner-up finish at Pocono, a 2.5-mile speedway, and then you ended up having, he had a decent outing, I guess we'll call it, at Michigan last week. The big thing for him, though, was he ended up getting involved in some late race contact and finished 15th. That was in no way indicative of just how strong a car he had. I had him pegged as maybe a driver that was going to be able to sweep at the 2-mile speedway / super speedways, but he just wasn't able to pull it off.
Absolutely, and that's kind of the difficulty of it, I'd say, is just the consistency is a bit of a pain.
Well, Hobson's got some good consistency right now after his 4 laps, 227.172. It's going to slot him 6th, just behind Jim Herrick on the board of the 11 drivers that have gone out there and taken time. It's now going to bring out who you were just talking about, that 99 of Matt Wagner. We'll see if he can go for back-to-back Indianapolis 500 poles.
And I guess this is now the fun time where we can really poke some fun at Matt Wagner's season. And Wagner really was in that championship thick of a fight early off in the season, really got a good start at Auto Club, getting that win. But after that, he kind of just started tapering off of his season. And the big dramatic change had to be after Watkins Glen, where, it just kind of started off the last few races of the season with Kentucky a 21st place finish, Milwaukee 18th, Homestead 13th. Improved a little bit at Silverstone, got back at it at Pocono, but Michigan last week, we saw him really get burned by that pit strategy late in the race.
Hey, that's the thing too. If you kind of eliminate Robert Molesca III from the conversation, everybody from second to about sixth in points have had up and down seasons. They've had spurts of really good luck, and then they hit a hard race and have to kind of get back on the comeback trail the following week. Second through sixth in points are less than 90 point separation. The tough thing for all of them is that Robert Molesca III's really only had one bad race, and all the other races, if he's not in victory lane, he's at least been consistent. So the fact that he hasn't had nearly as many bumps in the road this season as they have has kind of made it a runaway with this championship.
It's worth noting, but even later off in the season with Matt Wagner, I'd say he's almost more dominant later in the season than he was early off. Early off, he was almost leading about less than 10 laps to get good finishes. But obviously later in the season, I mean, he led 43 at Milwaukee. I mean, he was dominating at Michigan for over half the race before he ended up kind of getting sidelined by pit stops. I'd say later in the season, he really started to get more into his groove, but kind of started falling victim to more unfortunate events.
Nothing that kind of steps out to me here, just looking at last year's finishing results from the Indy 500. If you take a look at drivers that started up at the front of the field, of our top 4 starting drivers, only one driver led more than 15 laps, and that was Nick DeGroot starting from second place. If you combine the number of laps led by the pole sitter Matt Wagner and the 2 drivers that started in row 2, AJ Hobson and your eventual winner Craig Forsyth, you only come out to 20 laps led between those 3 drivers. So, we talk about starting track position being so important, but it's incredible that 3 drivers that start up in the first 2 rows led so few laps in that Indy 500 last year.
And that's the thing where they really just got shuffled back so quickly, and it brings a little bit of a concern. I almost wonder if it was part of a strategy that kind of turned sour with, yeah, obviously you want to qualify up front. Yeah, it's a lot of prestige, but later on in the race, you kind of want to get out of that front pack just in case something happens, a wreck happens, or some guys get too racy up there, or maybe even a bad pit call.
All right, here comes Matt Wagner in the 99 off of pit road. Let's talk a little bit about Indy 500 strategy because, as mentioned, there are a couple of drivers that will not be putting down lap times here tonight. Subsequently, we'll be starting at the rear of the field for the Indy 500. Gail Brooks, Joe McAdory amongst those. Is there a strategy, a sound strategy of starting towards the back for a long race like that, or do you kind of put yourself in a little bit of a box because how easy is it to make passes and work your way up through the field when you've got 30 plus cars here at Indy?
With one of our normal Dark Horse IndyCar Series races, I mean, obviously it's not 100% length, so it's a little bit more expedited, I'd say. The urgency is there. You have to go. But with the Indy 500, I could see maybe a little bit of an advantage of starting in the back, but I see the same issue that we have week in and week out where if you qualify in the back, you've got an uphill battle from the start of, instead of being able to really save your tires, kind of lay back, lay low, and just go with the flow, you have to start aggressively racing people, kind of working way up the field, getting to the front, when in true honesty, starting maybe 5th place might be the best option just to kind of ride around a little bit.
All right, so I've asked you a lot of questions here so far, Matt, but there's one that I really have to know the answer to. So, Matt Wagner drives for the team known as Speedy Snails Racing. What classifies as a Speedy Snail?
I'm thinking like Turbo from the Pixar movie.
Ah, okay.
That's what I'm imagining.
I never watched it, so I can only visualize what I guess it's about.
Boldy, you didn't think I have the time to watch a Pixar movie.
Well, we'll see if Matt Wagner's going to be able to go for back-to-back pole positions here. He's obviously got the benefit over Molesca III, Henry Bennett, Nick DeGroot. He's going out there on a much rubbered-in track than they were on. And Matt Wagner's going to have to see if he can launch himself above it. 39.549 going to be his first lap of the day. That is going to be fast, but it's still going to be about roughly 0.08 of a second slower, 0.07 of a second slower, I should say, than Molesca's first lap. So, as we say, that first lap really kind of determines where you're going to slot in. The 2nd through 4th laps are your opportunity to be able to gain or lose maybe 1 or 2 spots from where that first lap puts you. And right now, Matt Wagner slotted in P3.
go ahead and pull in AJ Hobson here. We've got him just sitting on standby.
Hey, AJ, it's Matt and Seth up here in the F1 booth. You got us?
Yes, I do.
All right, right now sitting P7 on the board with your number 63. We talked about the good momentum you've had at the Speedways the last couple of weeks. Does that mojo help you here in the Indy 500? And are you pretty satisfied with the lap time you put down, or are you looking to maybe go out there and see if you can improve later on in this qualifying session?
Well, it's always nice to be, in the top 3 rows at Indy. It's kind of where you shoot for these days with, the Fast 9 qualifying, how they do it now. But, doing some Indy 500s here before this one kind of gives me some good momentum going into it. I always tend to run better here at the Speedway. It's my hometown track being from Indiana, and also I really put a lot of work into this place, and it's always nice to have a good qualifying run like I feel like I had.
So AJ, it looks like Matt Wagner got a little bit of loose off that corner, but AJ, let's go ahead and ask you, since we're kind of suckers for year-old stats. Obviously, you qualified 3rd last season.
Yeah.
And you finished 10th. Is there almost a punishment to starting up front or starting in the rear? I mean, is it really a safe place, a good place to qualify?
Well, it's not really a punishment starting up front. It's just last year I didn't make it through the first turn. Unfortunately, I was positive on the jacker and we spun out. But I saved it, was able to come back, and I think if I remember correctly, I got caught up with Craig in turn 3, kind of sending it on the outside just to try to make something happen. But, I typically have good runs here, like I said, so I always feel confident here at the Speedway.
Matt and I were talking earlier on in the broadcast about the fact as it looks like Matt Wagner kind of slow here. I don't think he's completed his run, so we'll follow up on that. But, we were talking about the fact that you guys spent entire season out there in the DW12 cars. Now you come here to the Indy 500 and you're hopping into the IR18 car. I mean, is there a period of adjustment you had to go through and how the car was going to handle as opposed to a DW12 car, or is it a very easy transition?
Well, both cars are pretty different. The DW12 has a lot of downforce with it, so, there's more pack racing there. And with this IR18, it's kind of more follow the leader-ish, and you kind of have to drive it. Kind of separates, the men from the boys in a way, because, the car starts to slide around a little bit. You got to deal with aero push. You got to make your adjustments in the car with the bars and the weight jacker and stuff. So kind of comes down to more experience helps a lot of the time around here, and I have a lot of experience in the IR18, and personally, I like it a little more than the DW12, so I feel fairly confident.
All right, AJ, you talked about being up there in the Fast 9. Right now, sitting P6 of the drivers have gone out there and taken time, so we'll see if that lap time's able to hold up or if you decide later on to go out and improve. Best of luck. Good job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Obviously, right at this point in time, we're looking for the 4-lap average. But if we're looking at the drivers that have gone out and set the fastest lap times so far by singular lap, AJ Hobson is 3rd on that list with a 39.518. Now, Matt Wagner did not have issues. He actually did complete his 4 laps. It's going to slot him right now 10th on the board, a 226.897, and I think we can kind of attribute that quite a bit to that moment he had off of turn 2 there, Matt. We talk about momentum and holding that wheel as steadily as you can. A slip-up like that can really hurt the momentum for the rest of the run.
Absolutely. I mean, you kind of have to look at that and say, I think that really knocked him out of his rhythm. And again, you usually carry about 220 out of that corner, and he left that corner almost barring 200. So I think he's obviously going to go for kind of a retry at the end of the session, but not really a great confidence raiser.
I believe that slip up he had was on his 3rd lap. His first 2 laps looked really good, 39.5 for both of them. But then on that 3rd lap, 39.7 and then a 39.8 afterwards. You talk about the tire heat too, the tire heat buildup. A slide like that is certainly going to up the degrees in those tire temperatures and definitely going to make the car a lot more of a handful to drive on those final couple of laps.
That's the key thing of you want this car to be as predictable as possible so you can really push as much in these corners. And realistically, some of these drivers are finding that this car just isn't as predictable. At least maybe as they were testing and maybe as they found out. But Matt Wagner definitely was not expecting that car to be that slick in that corner. So it may have just been a bad adjustment on the weight jacker or maybe just some over adjustment he made in the car.
Looking like a couple of drivers will not be going out, setting down lap times at least at this point in time. Alec Coates and David Patton were next up on our list. Looks like the next driver that's actually going to be going out here momentarily is going to be second in the points. Our winner from Watkins Glen, Alex Van Desant. Let's talk a little bit about points here. I know that we already have documented that Robert Maleska III is going to win this championship, but it's still a close battle there for drivers inside the top 5 in the standings. Alex Van Desant second in points, only 8 points back till you find Nick DeGroot. You've also got a good battle going on for 5th in the standings between Charles Teed and Matt Wagner. They're separated by 2 points. We talk about, taking the momentum into season 4 of the Dark Horse IndyCar series. Just how much is on the line for these drivers in these points battles to be able to kind of have that one-upsmanship when the checkered flag waves on Saturday?
I mean, let's just kind of go down to top 5 here where Martin Maleska, he's on top of the world right now. Obviously, I mean, he has just straight up dominated the season, 10 wins. Then we got Van Desant in second, which Van Desant, I mean, you just got to imagine, yes, there's so many shoulda, coulda, woulda moments that he could have had this season, but honestly, I'm looking at it here and saying, hey, I mean, this was one of his statistically best seasons, and he was a constant threat in every race he's been in, whether it be a road course or an oval. So that's just amazing in itself, and that really gives me confidence going to next season. Now, Nick DeGroot, remember Nick DeGroot was on top of the world at the beginning of the season, and he kind of got that reality check. The world just gave him a vibe check. But Nick DeGroot, he's been kind of fighting back here recently, and look at him. He's all week clawing back to third. The points, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's looking towards next season. Eric Schaus, I mean, remember, Schaus just got his first win at Pocono a few weeks back, and that's huge for him. Obviously, going off of last season, going off of this season, seeing how much he improved, even at Watkins Glen, he was a threat. And then Charles Teed, I mean, again, that Iowa win, it's been a rocky kind of road ever since, but I mean, at Pocono, or sorry, my apologies, at Michigan, he was hauling.
Charles Teed has kind of been one of those drivers, too, that's been outside the box, if you will, in terms of pit strategy when we have those long green flag runs at the speedways. And we know that this coming Saturday, pit road is going to play just as much of a factor into the outcome of the race, who might be hoisting the checkered flag and the trophy, kissing the yard of bricks, as the action on the track itself. Van Desant coming around to begin his first lap time. Now, Van Desant took part in the Indy 500 last season, brought it home in the 4th position, but he did that from the 17th starting position. He was the only driver inside of the top 5 finishing results that started outside of the top 15. Another interesting thing, if you take him and Nick DeGroot, put together the laps led between the two of them, they led 3/4 of the 200 lapper last season.
And that's the thing where you've got to look at it saying, hey, trends do exist. Now, the big question is, obviously, DeGroot led a huge amount of last season, but Maleska wasn't in the race, and we saw how much of a threat Maleska has been this season. And the same thing with Alex Van Desant. He was in that race, but he was almost a muted factor, where, yeah, he led 50 laps, but just wasn't there at the end.
Also had the fastest lap of the entire race, a 40.333. That, of course, would have been in the draft. These drivers don't have any draft here to rely on in their qualifying session. But how about that for a first lap time? 39.496. That is the 3rd fastest of any driver overall today, and that's his first lap.
Well, realistically, Seth, I mean, look at the time of last season. The fastest lap was 40.333, and these drivers are pulling 39.496s. Really in single cars, so you got to be scratching your head saying, man, this is going to be a really fast race.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The pace is definitely going to be a lot faster than it was last season. With that being said, the moves that you make in an Indy car, you have to have cat-like reflexes. And that's just going to have to be even more so here in this race, I feel, because one wrong move, one little mistake could really cost you a shot at winning the Indy 500. We were told this past week that there was a modification made to race rules. They were going to have it where drivers had 2 faster pairs available during the course of the 200 lapper. That has now been amended down to 1 faster pair, so a lot less room for mistakes for everybody when they get to Saturday's main event.
And you got to think, for some of these drivers, they probably had a sigh of relief saying, oh man, I'm so happy there's 1 faster pair. And then there had to be some of these drivers that kind of had a little bit of a panic saying, oh no, there's only 1 faster pair. And you got to have to evaluate what side you're on that one, saying, realistically, you never want to use a faster pair, but it's nice to have it if you do, in fact, need it.
Right now, Alex Van de Sant trending just around the same area as Henry Bennett, maybe about 100th off each lap. Right now, trending third on the board. We'll see what he can get on this fourth and final lap here. If he can maybe clock in with a 39.56, he might be able to just barely edge Henry Bennett for that second position. Down to the stripe he comes, and, well, it's going to be about 4/100 short of the mark I gave him there, 39.602. So he is going to be third on the board with a 227.503. Just a little bit more than a tenth and a half off Maleska's current pole lap.
So let's go ahead and see if we can pull Matt Wagner over here and just have a little bit of conversation, see what exactly transpired on his really qualifying laps.
Matt, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
How's it going, guys?
It's going good for us, but we're a little bit perplexed what happened out there on the track with you. We saw you nearly lose the thing there on your third lap off of turn 2. Was it just the car getting loose on you? Was it something to do with the track conditions?
Oh, it was me putting too much weight jacker in the car. And I had my settings wrong the first time around. We're going to go for a rerun. Hopefully, we put in the right settings this time and hopefully go for a great run.
Now, I've got to ask you, Matt. Obviously, you got the pole last season for the Indy 500. Is there almost any pressure to kind of go off and repeat?
No, there's none at all. You look at the guys in the list, dude. You had what? You got what? Robert in there? He's been pretty much like flawless like the whole season. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. Like, he's one of the best drivers out there. And Henry Bennett, he's a very good driver. Those are the two that actually I will make it 3. I'm gonna put Nick DeGroot in that category as well. Those 3 guys are elite here, and there's no other. To beat them in qualifying is saying something.
We're looking right now at the guy that took the checkered flag here 1 year ago, Craig Forsyth, the defending Indy 500 winner. You know, we were just talking moments ago about the fact that you guys were told that you had 2 faster pairs for the upcoming race on Saturday, and then it got amended down to 1 faster pair. So how does knowing that there's 1 less faster pair to lean on change your mentality for when you get ready for the 500?
Knowing that fastest pair is just, I ain't worried about that. I just go by attrition. Whatever happens. I am not scared of getting wrecked. It's happened to me before. Like last week, we had that race over at Michigan. I was going for it. I didn't care about fuel, no strategy, just go all out and hope for the best.
All right, well, Matt, we're looking forward to seeing if you're going to be able to make the right adjustments, get out there and see what you can do as far as challenging for that pole position. Best of luck to you.
Yeah, guys, hey, it's good to talk to you guys again. It's been quite some time. Hopefully next Sunday we get to chat each other again.
Absolutely. Well, Matt won the season opener. He'd love to be able to have a bookend season here, win the first and last race of the year, be able to kiss that yard of bricks. Best of luck to you, Matt. Good to talk to you.
Yes, sir. You guys are doing an excellent job in broadcast. Love you guys. See ya.
I feel you enjoy confusing me with Matt Wagner.
I do. You know, I'm Seth as my brother Matt, my other brother Matt. Kind of feel it's one of those kind of scenarios. You know, one thing that I kind of realized too, Wagner and I could never be teammates. He's got the mentality, I'm not scared of being wrecked. I am terrified of being wrecked, so we would not be a good combination.
That's the thing. And, you know, I kind of looked and it looks like my apologies, Alexander Van de Sant actually hopped out before we could get a word with him. That's rather unfortunate, but obviously, actually, my apologies. It looks like he's still here. I'm just blind.
The club.
Yeah.
Is Eric Shaw still running fourth?
Alex,
it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us? Yeah, we'll see if we can try him again here. Alex, you got us up here in the booth? Well, he is around, but he's not around. See if we can talk with him here in just a few moments.
Wonder if he's sleeping in the car.
Could be. Could be. Probably going over some data. Might be watching this guy very closely. Greg Forsyth, of course, as we mentioned, the defending winner of this race, and he had good starting track position last year in the Indy 500 as well, rolling off from the outside of row number 2. Right now, currently sitting in the, I believe, top of the board. Yes, he is. Right now trending in the 2:27.7 mark, which would be about half a second faster than Robert Maleska III.
And that's kind of another indication of his track is getting faster. Not giving anything less to Forsyth, but this track is getting faster. It's getting more rubbered up. We started about 60% track usage, and that has only continued to really click up. Now, I've noticed that it looks like the track has gotten a little bit hotter since we started racing, but really the outside temp is mostly the same.
That could very well be just because of the fact we've got these cars out there pretty consistently going out there. Not a whole lot of time for the track to be able to cool down. Not a lot of time in between these qualifying efforts, and so the track heat staying there in the asphalt of these corners as Forsyth completes his final lap, and he's going to average in at a 2:27.554. So what was looking on the first 2 laps as a possible pole lap, it's going to put him currently P3, just behind Henry Bennett.
This track is definitely getting faster, but you got to be wondering what kind of adjustments are these guys putting in their cars to maybe kind of push that edge a little bit, because obviously you don't want to feel 100% comfortable with this car. If you're feeling 100% comfortable, that probably means you're not going fast enough, but obviously you don't want to be out of control.
Yeah, that's the thing too, I'm not all that familiar with how Indy cars really handle those self-adjustments in there. Is it like what we would equivalent to a stock car's track bar? Is that what we're talking about, that allows the driver to make that kind of little bit of a self-adjustment?
Well, realistically, it allows them to modify the suspension up front and the suspension out back, as well as kind of modify the weight jacket a little bit to help the car turn more in these corners. It can definitely free the car up and definitely can make the car a lot tighter, but it kind of is, I would guess, almost like a track bar, what you're saying, of one little adjustment can easily offset the car and kind of ruin the balance if you're not careful.
Most of the drivers we've had lately out on track are drivers that we're used to seeing during the course of this season here in the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. James Watson, though, going to be one of our one-off drivers taking to the track now in the number 39 machine. As he gets up to speed, I believe we've got the defending winner of the Indy 500 on standby.
Now let's go ahead and pull him in here.
Hey, Craig, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
You betcha, guys. How you doing?
Well, man, you got a lot of pressure on you coming into this race on Saturday. Defending winner here at the Yard of Bricks, trying to go 2 for 2 in your 2 starts here at this 2.5-mile speedway. What's the mentality going into that one? Are you confident? Are you nervous? Do you kind of think that you've got a playbook that everybody else is trying to study from last year?
I love this track, so it's it's going to be a tight race the whole way. I think. The competition level this season has been extreme, of course. So hopefully we can pull it out. I actually ended up having to do that whole lap without access to any of my in-car tools. My adjustment part on my wheel for me stopped working, so I had to do the whole lap in default settings, which wasn't ideal. So I'll probably be going out again, depending on how everyone else, how it ends up working out. I don't know if I've got anything for Robert and Henry. Those guys, their average mile per hour is in a whole different ballpark.
So I'll go ahead and I'll layer on the same question that Seth was really asking, which is, would this Indy 500 win, if you're able to repeat, would it mean any more than last season's?
Increased level of competition, absolutely. You've got the added pressure. You've got the pressure of winning the last one, but combine that with having some of the best drivers jumping into the league here, it would be spectacular to repeat. That's for sure.
Craig, we've documented that you've had a very up and down season so far this year. Currently find yourself 9th in the point standings, but still very much in a battle with guys like Gale Brooks, Kobe Moore to try and maybe finish up inside the top 7 to close out the year. With the fact you talk about the higher level of competition from last year as opposed now into this year, does that change the mentality coming into this Indy 500 race, or does the mentality stay the same between these two seasons?
I started off. I mean, I knew this season was I wasn't going to be able to I guess be as good this or finish as high in the points of the season. I had foot surgery at the start of the season, so I spent the first I think it was six or so races this season running hand controls for my throttle and brake, which is surprisingly difficult to do when you are not used to doing that. So I wasn't I was coming in into the season handicapped, and we're back on track now, but. It meant I knew I'd be further down in the standings than I would have liked to have been for this season. That's for sure. So I've now all the pressure's on to produce some results and hopefully get some wins. Hopefully get this one as the win. This is the important one.
As James Watson with trouble there in the center of 3 and 4, that's going to really hurt his 4-lap average, which right now was only trending 14th of the 15 drivers that had gone out there and taken time. Well, Craig, best of luck here. You talk about not having those adjustments. I'd really be interested to see what lap time you can lay down when you're able to put in the adjustments you want to there. So we'll see if you can make a run for the pole later on today. Good luck.
Yeah, that what happened right there. That is an example of the dangers of having too much adjustments, I think.
James Watson going to limp that machine down pit road. And that's the thing, too, that's going to be really interesting. A lot of times when we look at stock car qualifying, you've got a choice of how much grill tape you want to put on the car, how much you want that car to be skewed out, and sometimes you can over-adjust. And as Craig just said, that is the risk-reward there of over-adjusting on the race car. So James Watson is going to have a very slow final lap, not even going to break the 200-mile-per-hour average lap time, 198.9. And I think that we can safely assume that if he's able to have time later on today, he'll be going out and making another attempt.
I can easily tell you exactly what Forsyth was saying was correct. And you want to get this car as fast as possible. You want to trim this car out as much as possible to obviously go as fast as possible. But there is a certain point where you can go overboard and kind of overcompensate, and that will get you into trouble.
Found it interesting there. I'm not certain if we knew, the background story. Forsyth at the beginning of this season, having the surgery and having to use the hand controls, but it kind of put me in mind of somebody that's been able to do exactly the same thing here on iRacing, the IndyCar driver Robert Wickens, using the hand controls as he's been doing quite a number of IndyCar related events here on iRacing. So kind of interesting to get that backstory, and of course as well makes things a little bit more interesting if he's able to double down and win back-to-back Indianapolis 500s, talking about Craig Forsyth.
Absolutely. And how I imagine his hand controls really were the buttons on his steering wheel. And those buttons, I mean, they're not as articulated as pedals are, where you have ability to kind of push them down a certain amount, and they will kind of give you that certain percentage of throttle. With those buttons, as soon as you click them in or push them in, it's 0 to 100 right that. So that means braking and gas were just so difficult. But it looks like we have James Watson here if you want to ask, see what happened.
If we can find out here. Watson, first start on the season here in the Indy 500. James, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I sure do.
All right, well, it looks like you're going to be having to go out there and make another attempt, but what happened there off of turn 3?
She just came around. You know how it goes at Indy. When it wants to go, it just goes. A whole lot you can do about it, just kind of hold on for the ride.
So we were kind of sitting up here thinking, I mean, is it a possibility that you maybe just went a little bit too much on in-car adjustments and it just kind of brought it around?
Yeah, I think I may have put a little too much in the rear ARB. I didn't have any weight jacker cranked into it, but I think I just have a little too much AR. So I kind of have an idea on what I can fix and adjust for my last run to try to put in a representative lap, because I believe I got a lot more pace than what I was showing in that run from hell.
Now, James, you're one of several drivers that have gone out and taken time, plus other drivers that we're waiting to see take time that, as just mentioned, did not take part in the full season schedule, running a one-off here for the Indy 500. Now, a lot of these guys have run with each other. They're used to each other's driving styles. How much time are you going to have to spend in the 500 kind of getting used to the driving style of everybody around you before you get comfortable to be able to get up there, start racing?
Dude, the amount of overlap in iRacing Indy leagues is astonishing. Like, heck, most of the guys that are running drive for me. I'm the team owner of a few of these guys running, so I already have a great idea on what to expect from a lot of my competitors. I think that kind of makes it easier because there's not very many people you're kind of giving the side eye to on the racetrack.
There you go. Well, James, best of luck to you on that second run. We're looking forward to seeing if you can keep the thing pointed in the right direction, what you're going to be able to slot yourself in. Best of luck there. But that once again as well, though, thank you for showing us what happens if you do the over adjust, because we didn't exactly have a template for that.
Oh, you guys are so welcome. I'm so happy I could help you guys with that. Yeah, that was my goal the whole time. Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to do. Yep.
I mean, I'd recommend dirt bike, but I mean, I guess IndyCar works. Sorry for pointing out all that, but obviously you're going to get another chance to go here later in the race. Thanks for talking with us.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
So we'll be seeing James Watson later on, see if he'll be able to improve and be able to get himself up there, maybe into the Fast 9, as we're looking at Eric Peterson. And looking back at the last couple of weeks, where do I start with this one? Flipping at Pocono, involved in a huge wreck where he went airborne at Michigan. I mean, if there's a guy that needs some good luck in the Indy 500 on Saturday, I think you might be looking at this 36.
Eric Peterson is one of those guys who I will defend till I'm blue in the face, and just saying his results do not show his effort this season and do not really represent how well he's run. Realistically, he has run well in almost every race this season, but just bad luck. I mean, Auto Club 34th, Iowa 26th, Atlanta 23rd, Road America 22nd, Texas 31st. It gets worse and worse, and that is not representative of how well he's done this season.
Yeah, unfortunately, racing mirrors golf, where the lowest score wins. Unfortunately, it's not like bowling, where the highest score wins. Otherwise, I think that Eric Peterson would have this championship wrapped up heading into Saturday. He did finish 6th in the Indy 500 last year, where he actually started as well. And right now, he's got himself a pretty good 4-lap average, 227.373, currently slotted 5th of the 16 drivers that have taken time here tonight so far.
Now, Steph, I got to ask, I mean, how much does this season weigh on someone's mind for going into next season like Eric Peterson? I mean, obviously it's been a down year, and realistically, he could have been without a top 10 for this entire season, minus the run at Silverstone for 9th.
Yeah, the thing of it is, though, it's a brand new season. It's a clean slate. And usually drivers, when they're coming off a season like Peterson's had this year, they don't even think about the previous season. They just go out and say, all right, it's a brand new season. Everyone's on a level playing field. We're all starting out at 0 starting points. This is where it starts.
This is where the real game begins. It looks like we may have him here to have a chat with. Actually, no, it does not appear so.
Eric Peterson actually is part of the group here tonight that is kind of talking through the drivers as they get out here for these qualifying sessions, fill them in with the rules of what they've got to do. He, along with Nicholas Winook, they have been very efficiently getting these guys out here in a very timely fashion and in a very consistent order to be able to put down these lap times. I mean, so far, 16 drivers have gone out to put down lap times, and we're only about, nearly 2 hours into this qualifying session, already halfway through our current grid of drivers that were registered for this event on Saturday.
And it looks like we've got Cohen Evans coming up. I did notice that Jeff Hysong, he did announce that he would not be here at qualifying tonight, so he's going to be one of those guys starting from the back of the field.
Hysong, another driver that's had some pretty good momentum the last couple of weeks, had, I believe, a top 5 run, I want to say back at Pocono. I'd have to double check on that one. He was at least up inside the top 10. I know that much. So we'll see if he will end up being able to continue that momentum on Saturday. As you mentioned, probably not going to be putting down a lap time here tonight. We'll be starting at the rear of the field. Now, you talked about Cohen Evans. Cohen Evans is another one-off driver, but he's not a driver that we are unfamiliar with. We've seen him take part in a couple of other Indy 500s in other leagues and kind of got monikered Mr. Fuel Saver, pulled off an incredible fuel stretch in another league at Homestead Miami Speedway. Very familiar to these Indy cars, and so it'll be interesting to see how he stacks up against some of these guys. As a matter of fact, I believe that the same Indy 500s that he took part in, Henry Bennett was a part of. So those two know each other very well.
You know, Seth, I mean, I know you're kind of the fuel saver yourself, and I would kind of roast you over it, but I just don't have enough fuel to complete that. I've been working on that one for a few minutes, please.
I noticed you were. Yep. I was wondering why you were quiet for the last 10 minutes. Now I know. You put a lot of brain power into that reference there. Here comes Cohen Evans off of pit road, getting ready to put down his 4-lap average. So far, 16 drivers have taken time. I believe there have been a total of 5 drivers so far that have not been able to put down a lap time. 4 of them drivers that were not here when their number came up. The other one, J.W. Miller, had to abort his lap time, and we did hear that he will be trying to make an attempt later on this evening after all the drivers' time slots are completed. Charles Johnson is the last driver that will have to go out before drivers can have the choice of whether they want to go out, try and improve their lap time or not. And it's a catch-22, Matt. You know, there's drivers that we look at right now that we know for certain, like Matt Wagner. He's going to be going back out there. James Watson's going to be going back out there. I think we might even see possibly Corey Lane or David Leclerc go out there again, try and see if they get into the 227 mile per hour bracket. But you look at someone there like Henry Bennett, Craig Forsyth, Alex Van de Sant. Are they comfortable with where they're at, or do they want to try and go out and improve? Because you mentioned this earlier. When you go out there and you take the green flag to start another 4-lap average, the lap time you had before is completely erased. So if you go out and run slower, doesn't matter. You've lost those spots. You cannot fall back on the 4-lap average you had previously.
I'd easily say from a top 10 down, I would personally go take another lap. I mean, obviously I'm looking at James Watson here, and that's one of the guys who undoubtedly is going to go take another lap. But if I'm above that top 5 later on in this qualifying session, I really don't know if I want to take another lap. I mean, obviously it's going to be gripped up, but I really wouldn't want to sacrifice a good top 5 starting position for maybe even worse than top 5. I don't know if I'd do it.
It'll be very interesting. These drivers going to have to not only have the physical battle with the car out on the track, but then afterwards have to have the mental battle with themselves. Should I not? I don't know if there's any daisies in the infield, but they might have to kind of do the, should I go out? Should I not go out? Should I go out? Should I not go out? And try and figure out that way whether or not to go out and put down a second lap time. As Cohen Evans, nice first lap for him, 39.487. It's going to be third fastest lap of the day behind Robert Maleska III and Henry Bennett. And right now has him slotted in around, I believe, the 3rd position if he can hold it for these next 3 laps.
Absolutely. And I'm just kind of taking a look here through the upcoming drivers we've got. So obviously everyone is about staged out about 5 minutes from each other. It takes about 5 minutes to do these qualifying runs. We've got Cohen Evans right now. Jeff Heisong was scheduled for 8:05, so it looks like we might be able to take just a small little breather then to kind of catch up on interviews here. Then we've got Ben Combs at 8:10, Bronson Safford at 8:15, and Rick Revan. He's, I believe it's Raven or Revan. I'm not positive. I'm going to have to ask him to double check. But he's one of those guys that I saw Rick in an Indy 500 race that I was kind of lucky to attend the other night. And man, he really kind of put a lot of her on the field, but he was fast.
So maybe one of those late entries that could have a challenge there for the pole position, currently held by Robert Maleska III. Now, Cohen Evans has laid down 2 laps, and he currently is tracking above Maleska III. But, of course, those very important 3rd and 4th laps where the lap times taper off, we'll see if he can at least maintain. Right now, about 2 100ths above, and there you see right there, after the 3rd lap, which is going to clock in at a 39.598, he all of a sudden drops from 1st down to 4th on the board.
Ay. And that's the thing where just one little mess up. A lot of these guys would love to go on this one lap kind of dash and just go as hard as you possibly can. But you got to remember, a lot of these guys are probably using in-car adjustments that this car probably isn't the same from lap 1 to lap 4 because they're constantly adjusting that car, trying to just maximize it for every corner as those tires begin to fade.
39.631, the final lap laid down by Cohen Evans. 227.438 will be his 4-lap average, slotting him in the 5th position. And I mentioned this towards the beginning of the broadcast too. Here in qualifying, much like super speedway racing, it's going to come down to hundredths and thousandths of a second. And it's incredible because you look at the fall off between his 2nd and 3rd lap. That was kind of the difference maker where we saw him drop from the top down to 4th. It was only 3 hundredths of a second, but it translated to 3 spots lost on the grid.
That just shows you how tight the competition is here for this kind of top 5, top 10 spot. Now, that could really kind of show you how easily it is where maybe a driver brushes the wall or they just have an incorrect adjustment in. Just how much time would they lose off of that?
And Evans, as we mentioned, going to slot in 5th on the board. And as you mentioned, Jeff Hysong not going to be putting down a lap time. So we've got a little bit of time to be able to do an interview. Let's talk with Cohen.
Hey. Oh, but wow, you're fast.
Fast. The dexterity of youth, or lack thereof. Hey, Cohen, it's Matt and Seth up here in the upper end booth. You got us?
I sure do.
All right, right now, P5 on the board, up there in the mid-227 mile per hour lap time bracket. Car looked pretty good out there. Is there any more you can get out of it later on, or are you pretty happy with that lap time?
I'm pretty happy, but I'm sure I could find a few more tenths if I really wanted to, but I doubt that will happen tonight.
Now, I've got to ask here. I mean, we kind of noticed a little bit of wiggle there on your run, and that easily kind of translated into 3 positions. I mean, how sensitive are these cars, and how vital it is to kind of have the cleanest lap possible?
These cars are super sensitive, and they're like super edgy too. And you have to have the car edgy for it to be fast. So like when the cars are edgy, it's super easy to make a mistake, especially just like a tiny wiggle, which could cost you a few spots, just like you said.
Now, Cohen, we've obviously been documenting during the course of the day, pretty much the money lap is that first lap. It sets the precedent, and then, as the tires heat up, the lap times start to taper off as you head down towards that 4th and final lap. We know that you drivers are able to make some self-adjustments in the car. What kind of adjustments do you make, and just how much of a swing do you take at those adjustments as you get down lap after lap?
Well, I didn't make any adjustments. I thought about it going into like my 3rd or 4th lap of like adding going down on the weight jacker a bit because I knew it was getting a little loose, but I decided against it at the end of the day. But I'm sure if I did, I could find a bit more speed.
All right, well, Cohen, a good solid lap time there. Currently sitting P5 on the board. We'll look to see once everybody takes time where you slot in. And, of course, then you're going to have to kind of play the mental game with yourself if you want to go out there, try and improve or not. So good job. Best of luck to you later on tonight if you do decide to go out for a second attempt.
Thank you.
So it looks like after we get through the time slot that would have belonged to Jeff Hysong, it would then have been Benjamin Combs, another driver that has run pretty much the majority of the season. Has had a bit of an up and down season in that 77 machine. It looks like he is not here tonight. So like the next driver that would be heading out is another one-off driver, if you will, a guy that we're very familiar with here on FRN and other leagues, and that's Bronson Stafford. So Matt, I know that you're friends with Bronson. I've not seen him out there in an Indy car before. What are we expecting to see out of that car?
Well, would you believe me if I told you, but he actually has won an Indy 500 before. But the problem is, it was in the old DW12 car that this league usually runs.
Ooh.
So that definitely kind of brings that gap of experience. He kind of mentioned that he hasn't really driven the IR18 that much, and he really hasn't driven it since the new Aero Screen update. So that kind of shows you how maybe out of touch he is with his car currently.
Of course, we appreciate Bronson Stafford carrying the black, green, and white FRN colors on his machine as he's now out on track, getting ready to come around and begin his 4-lap average. You know, it's interesting because we were talking with James Watson. He said he knows a number of the guys in the field here. I know that Owen Evans is familiar with guys like Henry Bennett and Nick DeGroot. He's raced with them for a number of years. I'm kind of wondering about some of these other guys, though, like Bronson Stafford. Not sure how many drivers in the field here he's familiar with the racing style. I would have to think that if you're a driver that's coming in and you don't know anybody that you're racing around, at least the first 20, maybe 25 laps of the Indy 500, it's going to be a learning period, figuring out where you stack up to the rest of the competition, your racing style versus their racing style. Because again, as we mentioned, you've only got one faster pair, so you got to be a quick learner. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself with a very early end to your 500 run.
I'd say very easily it becomes very touch and go, but you need to conserve a little bit. And, you know, obviously you don't want to go out there, force it 3 wide on lap 2. I mean, that's going to really get the wrong impression. You're going to not make friends, but obviously a lot of these guys coming in for one-off races, they have been informed that, hey, the championship's pretty much decided that, listen, this is a race like any other, and they want to go out and get this trophy. And, you know, obviously they don't want to upset the normal drivers in this series, but, I mean, listen, they're not here to kind of make friends. They're here to try and win the race.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, too, because, you know, if you look at NASCAR themselves with the Cup Series, you know, they kind of have their season finale at the beginning of the year. Their big race is the Daytona 500. It's interesting that you've got the season ender here being the Indianapolis 500, the big race on the year. Not only do you crown a champion, but you crown an Indianapolis 500 winner as well. So it kind of puts double on the line for these drivers in the season finale.
And that's the thing. It kind of throws you against some competition you're maybe not familiar with, where, hey, for the last 17 races, you've been racing with the guy right next to you, and you know how he races, you know how they act, you know how they go into the corners, you know how they defend. Well, now you've got about 35 drivers that you have never raced with before, and maybe you've raced them in other leagues, but not this current league, and, you know, hey, they may have a different reaction.
Stafford right now currently trending in the 8th position. Currently averaging out at 222.201 halfway through his run. A 6:01 for his first lap, a 6:24 for his second lap. And the thing I'm kind of wondering here is, I talked about this back earlier on around the first couple of entries that were out there. There is an opportunity to be able to, if you're able to adjust enough, to be able to pick up on that 4th and final lap. But if you are trending in the wrong direction, are you basically then just riding it out on the 4th and 3rd laps? Or is there something that as a driver you can do to at least kind of just, in essence, stop the bleeding, at least kind of keep the lap times consistent and not lose a bunch, like 3 or 4 positions in those final 2 laps?
I mean, to be honest, you need to look at it almost from a pessimistic standpoint where, all right, yeah, I'm not doing well. I'm kind of getting slick in the corner. Where if you're getting slick in the corner, we're going to have to sacrifice speed to make it through the rest of this run. So you got to really aggressively chase downforce. And again, if the car really feels controllable in all these corners, well, I mean, how safe am I being? Do I really need to have this much grip in the corners? Let me go ahead and I can tune it down a little bit, go a little bit more for a loose set, less downforce, more just straight line speed.
Bronson Stafford, after his 3rd lap, was trending just above the 227 mile per hour mark, but a 39.770 for his 4th and final lap will put him below that mark at a 226.895. That's going to put him 15th on the board, and that is behind Matt Wagner, who had that moment off of turn 2. So not exactly the fastest of lap times there for Bronson Stafford. I didn't see a whole lot of issue, at least just from the third person standpoint, looking at that 61 car. You got to think that more than likely he'll be making some adjustments, might be making another attempt later on.
Well, go ahead and I'll bring up to you where, again, Bronson, really the last time that he was dominant in these cars had to be DW12. And the DW12 has tools for the driver to use, but they're just not that wide of a variety with the new brand new DW8, or sorry, DIR18 cars. They have a lot more anti-roll bar support, both in the front and the back, and the weight jackers that really help these cars come alive. And I think he's trying to come up to that learning curve here. We can ask him right now. He just ended up popping up in the waiting room.
Yeah, let's see if we can talk with Bronson Stafford here. Right now, sitting 15th on the scoring monitor. Bronson, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, what's up, guys?
All right, so you got out there first time today, set down a lap time. What was the car feeling like there? What adjustments can you make? Do you go out there for a second attempt?
I'm not actually sure if I'll run a second one. I kind of haven't ran these cars in a long time, so last time I ran them, there wasn't even anything that you could adjust on them now, like weight jackers and all that stuff. So I was completely in the blue, and I don't know, the car was a little slidey, a little bit more slidey than I would have liked for qualifying, but we'll see what we can dial in for race trim more than anything.
Well, first of all, I have to ask, why in the world are you so slow? But second of all, the more important question is, obviously, with the weight jackers and the anti-roll bars, both in the front and the back, I mean, do you see that being a learning curve for you later in the race?
Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing with the Indy car. It's been forever since I ran them, and I could tell right off the bat, like I'm gonna have some work to do. It just I was sliding really bad. I actually had to lift a couple times through the corner because it was just start to slide the rear end. So I'll have to look at it. We'll have to adjust and hopefully, be ready to go for Saturday.
Well, Bronson, best of luck to you on that. Right now, currently sitting 15th. We'll look to see where you slide in once everybody takes some time, and we'll see if you actually decide to take that second attempt there. And best of luck to you on Saturday.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Thanks, Seth.
Jim Brooks is going to be the next one out there on the track. Now, Jim Brooks ran most of the season in the 76 car. We saw last week at Michigan that he did a number swap over to the 51, which is what he's going to be running here for the Indianapolis 500 as well. Jim Brooks, another driver that's kind of had a bit of an up and down season, 13th in the point stands, has made every start, but he's still looking for his first top 5 on the year. And this is a guy that finished 3rd in the Indy 500 last season, so might get his first top 5 on Saturday.
Absolutely. And definitely with him changing his number to 51, he was trying to, it looks like kind of a showcase the partnership between Area 51 and Dark Horse IndyCar Series, since looks like, I believe they're partnering together to do the Indy 500 Coca-Cola 600 dual weekend here later in the season, or later in the year. I believe it's mid-June.
I think you are correct. Jim Brooks actually, as mentioned, 3rd place finisher 1 year ago. He was the only driver inside of the top 5 in last year's finisher results that did not lead a lap. And if I recall correctly, he was kind of one of those drivers that adopted the strategy you were talking about a moments ago of the kind of ride towards the back, let everything settle out, and then make that charge late.
Absolutely. And it's more or less waiting and seeing. It's almost, kind of think of it like this. You're an NFL running back and you're waiting for your blockers to really kind of make the blocks for you so you can choose the easiest path of just trying to get past all of them. That's almost the same strategy here where you need to bide your time and wait for the holes to open up, but you can really attack.
Jim Brooks, I believe that was his warm-up lap. I'm hoping it was his warm-up lap because it clocked in at a 41.9, which would have been the first time that a driver has not clocked into the 39-second bracket, so I'm pretty sure that was his warm-up lap. This is going to be his first lap. We'll see where it's going to place him and set the trend for him for the rest of this run. 39.553. Right now, that is the 12th fastest lap time put down on the board so far.
Absolutely. I'm just kind of looking through here, and I wonder how many kind of drivers in the back of our heads are just, they're worried about just wrecking on pit road. Because, I mean, obviously you don't want to go out and your first impression on broadcast is spinning it out on pit road. We could easily ask J.W. Miller that. But, I mean, I wonder how many of these drivers are just being a bit conservative because they just don't want to wreck the car.
Interesting point, because we know in super speedway racing with stock cars, getting off of pit lane can play just as much of a part in how much speed you're going to have on your warm-up lap as anything. I mean, what do these drivers have to do between coming off of pit road to coming around to the start-finish line? What kind of gears do they have to hit? Just how much speed do they have to carry? Do they have to tiptoe? So kind of interesting to actually ask one of the drivers here that we talked to in a few moments, see what their routine is of coming off of pit road.
Absolutely. And again, you have that 60-second time limit. Now, what I noticed earlier, some of these drivers are being really gingerly getting off of pit road on the back straightaway. We're kind of slowly accelerating up, trying to conserve tires as much as possible. Now, what I'm really wondering is, are those drivers kind of having the time clock in their head and just counting out the seconds of, all right, I got 60 seconds till I make it from the end of pit road all the way to the front straightaway, thinking, all right, I need to be up there quick, but I need to also save my tires for the actual qualifying runs. So I don't know.
Jim Brooks' first lap time looked like he might be in trouble of not being inside the top 10. Since then, he's picked it up. Right now, he's trending P8. As he'll come around for his fourth and final lap. And one thing that I did notice back when Craig Forsyth, who's right now third on the board, when he went out there, he was very, very gingerly coming around the access road. When he got to turn 2, he actually backed the pace down. He was coasting about 120 miles per hour, then picked up the throttle again, came around to begin his first lap, and obviously, as we can see, it translated to some very good average speed.
That's the thing. That's definitely something that Jim Brooks likes to see. And obviously, this is a really good run for Jim Brooks. Obviously, he would prefer something in the top 5, top 3, but I mean, just looking at Jim Brooks' season, I mean, he's kind of had one of those, I know we keep saying it a lot, but that up and down season where he's just been hanging around there.
Top 10s and no top 5s coming into this season finale. Jim Brooks right now, as we're waiting for the final fourth lap time to come in, was sitting P8, 2:27.301. We'll see how the fourth and final lap time sets him up for the current grid. Should have him still inside of the top 5. We'll see if he'll hold that 8th position, as before that lap time came in, he was sitting about a 10th faster than the driver behind him, Kobe Moore, and 39.708, actually going to drop him 3 spots from 8th down to 11th.
Ay. That's definitely not what he likes to see here.
The next driver that would have been out there is Joe McAdor. We already documented earlier on tonight that he was one of a few drivers announced that they were not going to be able to put down a lap time here tonight. Subsequently, we'll start at the rear of the field for the Indy 500. So now getting onto pit road, next car to go out is going to be Krista Nelson in the 13 machine. A very pleasant surprise here this season. Krista Nelson struggled in the Indy 500 that we covered last season. This season, quite a number of appearances just outside of the top 10. 3 top 10s on the year, 17th in the standings. And it kind of seems like for Krista Nelson, it's been a bit of a learning period here during the course of this year. But we've definitely seen the confidence level pick up as we've gone further and further into the schedule.
Absolutely. I mean, she has been the one person that I've really seen improve week after week. And yes, it's not knocking, but it's not really knocking on the door of a top 5, top 3, top 2, and maybe a win, but it's gradual improvement and it's kind of repeating itself week after week.
Kristen Nelson, I believe, was the last car running last season in the 500, finished in the 17th position, albeit 15 laps down. We'll see if she can improve on that this year. Last year qualified in the 18th position in the Indy 500 starting grid. She'll come around and begin her first time lap.
And just kind of looking back here, I mean, we saw how rough the season started out for. I mean, obviously finishing 21st at Auto Club, 23rd at Iowa, 30th at Atlanta. But it's really that turning point, almost at Road America, it seems like, where she kind of got the season back on track. 16th at Road America, had some down weeks at Texas and Phoenix, but Twin Ring Motegi is really where she kind of put the bow on it, with a top 10 finish. After Coda, Las Vegas, Watkins Glen, she put another top 10. Kentucky was a 9th place finish, and with these past 4 or 5 races, she has not finished outside of the top 15.
Now, it's going to be really interesting here as I'm looking at the drivers that at this point in time have not taken time. There are going to be a few that will not take time at all here tonight. Some other drivers just missing their time slot, and they'll be here later on tonight to put down their official 4-lap averages. But two drivers that kind of jump out to me right now are Jimmy Drynan and Jeff Heisong, because both of them had some really good runs at the speedways that we had to close out this season. Fifth place run at Homestead for Jimmy Drynan. He was also up inside of the top 10 quite a bit at Michigan last week. And then Jeff Heisong, coming off of a top 5 run at Michigan last week, finishing in the 5th position. Another very fast speedway here at Indianapolis. So, these are a couple of guys that if they don't put lap times down here tonight, they're going to be starting at the back of the pack. Going to be a lot of fun to watch those fast machines try to cut their way through traffic.
I mean, to be honest, it didn't really seem like it was much of a problem for him last season with Heisong starting in 16th and Drynan starting in 21st. I mean, Drynan did get taken out in an accident. He was about 100 laps down near the end of it, but Heisong only was 2 down, and he did lead a couple of laps.
Krista Nelson on her, I believe, 3rd lap of this run. Currently finds herself slotted in the 8th position. And we'll see if she's going to be able to keep the trend up there inside of the top 10. First lap, a 39.601. Second lap, a 39.616. So the lap time's at least consistent there. Only a drop off of about 15 1/1000s between laps 1 and 2. Currently up inside the 227 mile per hour lap time.
It's still just looking ahead a little bit here. Obviously, we've got Kristen Nelson on track currently, but we do have 3 drivers who are currently set to round out our scheduled qualifying, and then we go on to some of the drivers making a last-ditch effort attempt to try and maybe sacrifice their lap time already, or obviously drivers that just weren't able to get to the line before the timer started. So we've obviously got Jeff Duncan, Gail Brooks, and Charles Johnson. Not sure if Gail Brooks is going to be here.
No, Gail Brooks announced that before we even got to qualifying that he wasn't going to be putting down a lap time here tonight. We'll be starting at the rear of the field. So as Charles Johnson takes the checkered flag, it's then going to be drivers either that missed their time slot going out for their first attempt or drivers that are going to go out for a second attempt. And already the list is starting to build up of drivers that are getting ready to go out for second attempts here. They're able to put themselves into the queue, so to speak. J.W. Miller obviously wants to go out there and put down his first official 4-lap average, but David Leclerc, Alex Coates, Matt Wagner, Nick DeGroot, James Watson, Gary Corley, and Alex Van de Sant have all added themselves to the queue so far to go out for a second try.
And that's the thing where a lot of these drivers, David Leclerc is almost a given, but you got to wonder how much Leclerc is seeing these drivers. Obviously he had the pleasure of going first, and we kind of thought about it. It was a little bit of a disadvantage, but I almost think it was an advantage because, David gets to see all of these drivers going around track, see what lines they're running. Obviously, I'm imagining he's friends with a few of these guys and trying to ask them, like, hey, what are you running in this certain corner? What are you doing? What issues are you noticing?
It's interesting, too, because obviously these drivers were given the setup to be able to go out and test it during the course of this week, then come out here and try and put down the money laps, the 4-lap averages, to try and clinch this pole position. During the course of the time between their first and second run, if you're looking at some of these guys like David Leclerc, Matt Wagner, Nick DeGroot, are they going into their own private server with the setup trying to figure out some nooks and crannies, some little bit of adjustments they can make to make their cars a little bit faster? Are they observing what's going on here in qualifying, seeing what other drivers are doing to see if that is something they can adapt to improve their lap time? Is Charles Johnson going to spin it off of pit road?
I can definitely see a few differences in some of these guys kind of having different ideas about it. Maybe just go running random hosted races or doing team practices. But now we got to wonder about Charles Johnson if he's going to get to the line in time. He's got about a 60-second timer from the exit of pit road to the beginning of the start-finish line. I don't have my timer up here currently, but I believe race control will tell him if he's exceeded that.
And we will be finding that out momentarily. Looking for her first top 5 on the season and 4th top 10 is Krista Nelson. Let's talk with her. Hey, Krista, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I sure do. How y'all doing tonight?
Well, we're doing good. Oh, that car looks like it's pretty steady down there to the ground. You're currently slotted in the 14th position, getting ready for your second, at least that we know of, that we broadcasted here, Indy 500. What's the confidence level going into that one? And How do you think that car feels right now? Are you getting ready for another attempt? Are you pretty satisfied with the lap time you got?
I will probably stick because I'm not in the class with those guys that are competing for the top spots. You know, I just want to start the race because I race this place well. I feel pretty good about it. The car feels good. I could have qualified a little better, but I was paying too much attention to trying to move my weight jacker back and forth every corner, and that's not my style. So doing that, I was going back and forth on the track a little bit, so I left a lot on the table there, I think. But race-wise, I feel pretty good. I'll do all right.
Obviously, Krista, I mean, you kind of say you're not in the class of those guys, but I'm seeing kind of progress towards that. I mean, looking at your beginning of the season to now, at least in the series, I can just see gradual improvement. How much confidence does that give you going towards next season?
Quite a bit. I'm looking forward to it. Used to be I was hoping for top 15s, and now I'm realistically, I think, shooting for top 10s, and I'm ready to move on to top 5s.
Now, obviously, we know the championship's locked up, and we've kind of talked about the last couple of weeks that heading into these speedway races, driver mentalities change a little bit now, knowing that there is no championship on the line, just race wins, top 5s and top 10s to close out the season. Right now, with sitting inside of the top 15, going to be mired back in traffic at the start. So do you have like a preliminary strategy once the green flag drops, or is it going to be a play-it-by-ear situation?
Well, my primary strategy, especially with the triple line start, is to be survive. Just survive. And after that, we'll just see how I'm doing. I'd like to use racecraft and race my way up into the top 15, top 10, stay there, and then maybe I can use a little strategy to get myself a little higher up there.
All right, Krista, well, best of luck to you. Good job there on that 2:27 average lap time. We'll see where it situates you when everybody's out there and finishes up their lap times here tonight. Best of luck in the 500 on Saturday.
Thank you very much. And y'all are doing a great job. Look forward to seeing you Saturday.
Charles Johnson did get to the line in time there, Matt. He's been able to put down a couple of his lap times already, currently trending with a 2:27.287. That currently has him sitting 8th on the board. We'll see what his final 2 lap times are going to place him. The interesting thing is you see trends at the beginning of the race where drivers were getting relatively faster. We're starting to see with some of these drivers at the tail end, they're slotting in after their first 2 laps, somewhere around 7th and 8th, but after those final 2 laps, 3 and 4 are in the books, they find themselves outside of the top 10. So while the track seems to definitely be gripping up, the lap times seem to be falling off a lot more than they were earlier. And now,
suspension.
Wow.
That's the end of that run.
And that was on his, I believe, final lap as well. And that's going to be another attempt, obviously, for Charles Johnson. He started the run with a spin. He finishes the run with a spin.
And that's the thing where I really wonder how much that initial spin really heated up his back tires, front tires a little bit. So I wonder if it was just too much for the car to handle.
Tough break there for Charles Johnson. I don't think his 4th lap is going to be scored. So we'll have to wait and see where that slots him. Obviously, he and James Watson are 2 drivers that have, as we said, kind of over-adjusted their race cars during the course of their qualifying efforts, and it has not paid off for either one of them. So now we're going to start entering in, as Johnson was the last driver on the time slots to go out. We're going to start to enter into drivers going out there for second attempts. I believe that the first driver that would be going out there potentially would be J.W. Miller in the 8 machine, who was one of the drivers who he just mentioned that had to abort his qualifying run the first time out. And he is indeed coming out here on the racetrack. So
looks like he's taking it a bit more gingerly on pit road this time.
Yeah, it definitely does. I'm wondering here, J.W. Miller never got to really go out there and see what his car was able to do up to speed. He kind of pulled it down to the apron after taking the green flag, did not get back around in time for his lap times to be counted, did not meet that 60-second bracket. But I'm looking at guys like David Leclerc. He right now would be the next one out to begin officially his second attempt. He went out there on an entirely green racetrack. He was the first one out there to begin this qualifying session. With the track having so much rubber in it now, is there a way that he'd be able to look at how much rubber is laid down, how much dark gray of a groove we have now from the middle to the inside line, to be able to say, well, I can put this much of an adjustment into the race car and it'll be faster?
Easily. But here's the thing, he's going to have to look at it, and I think that's the big reason that we see a lot of these guys falling off after lap 3, lap 4, is that they're adjusting their car for the first 2 laps, and after that, a lot of these guys just don't seem to have a grasp on the adjustments that required after that those 2 laps.
Those that are just joining us, you're watching Pole Day qualifying for the Season 3 Dark Horse IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500, presented by HyperX. That race will be run this Saturday. Green flag to fly at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Right now on the right side of your screen, this is where everybody has stacked up after everyone's time slots went by. Maleska III, the 10-time winner, top of the board with a 6.61. Henry Bennett behind him with a 6.26. Those two, the only ones in the 227 sixes. Then you got a couple of drivers in the 227 fives with Craig Forsyth, the defending winner of the 500, and second in points, Alex Van Desant. Cohen Evans right now completing the top 5, and the final spots inside of the Fast 9, Eric Peterson, Nick DeGroot, the outgoing champion, Covey Moore, and Jim Herrick. Everybody else trying to see if they can race their way into the Fast 9, as we've now entered into the session where drivers are going out for their second attempt at tackling this Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
I say realistically, this really aids some of the drivers. Go home, all 33 drivers will make it into this race. So that really kind of reduces a lot of the pressure for some of these guys to really go up there and perform.
Certainly does. No doubt about that. I mean, if you have a slip-up like we saw a couple of drivers have, at least you know, even if you're not able to go out there for a second attempt, that you will be taking part in the event. And that might have actually made the decision easier for a couple of drivers that said, you know, I'm going to forfeit going out there and running a lap time. I'll start at the rear for the Indianapolis 500. Made that decision a lot easier. They probably would have had to do a lot of shuffling to make sure that they got here for qualifying if there were going to be more than 34 drivers trying to enter into this Indy 500 on Saturday.
I mean, what would you prefer, starting at the front of the field or starting in the back of the field? Because I sure don't want to start in the middle of the pack.
No, absolutely not. You do not want to be in the eye of the storm. I mean, if you're asking me, you know my memo. I love to be at the back of the pack and kind of see what's going on ahead of me. For no other reason but that the fact that I know what everybody else is doing. With especially these Indy cars, they move around so much. There is a lot of really what's the word I'm trying to look for? Dartiness, I think, is really the word I'm looking for, with how these drivers make moves on each other. And sometimes you have to make a reactionary move, and with how tight these corners are, that reactionary move could end up taking and ending your day as well as several other drivers if it's up at the front of the field. If you're at the rear of the field, at least for the first half of the race, you get to basically be the decider on whether or not your car is going to be damaged, and you're going to have to use that fast repair early on.
You know, one general consensus that I got from a few of the drivers is they're really on those two extremes and no one's totally happy with their car. I mean, you've heard some of the guys pop up here and say, man, this is kind of tight. It wants to plow into the wall. And other drivers come up and say, man, it's kind of slippery. So kind of the difference in opinions here.
How about J.W. Miller? How about a comeback run for him? We saw him loop that thing around the pit road. Couldn't make it back to the start-finish line to begin his first set of a 4-lap average. Out here for his second attempt, well, technically his first official attempt to take the green flag, and he is slotted 8th place. Average 4 laps, 227.278.
Absolutely. But now we have David Leclerc coming back out, and really, I'm a huge fan of David Leclerc at these kind of speedway type tracks because he just seems to know how to get through the field.
Leclerc, when he went out, you can see there, first 4-lap average, a 226.870. And every driver that went out after him, as he was the first one to begin qualifying here tonight, got faster and faster and faster. Now that there's more rubber into the racetrack, we'll see what David Leclerc can do as he'll try and jump up into the 227-mile-per-hour bracket.
And just kind of, we can't say any more about David Leclerc than we already have, but just kind of missed opportunities kind of hit me whenever I talk about him.
All right, let's see if we can talk with J.W. Miller, who's on standby with us here.
Go ahead and pull him in.
Hey, J.W., it's Matt and Seth up here in the booth. Got us?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we saw you had a little bit of trouble there on your first qualifying attempt, but I gotta wonder if maybe that was a blessing in disguise, because on the second attempt, you were able to go out there on a track that was much more rubbered in, a lot more grip in there, and right now sitting P8. So how are you feeling about that lap time? Do you think that you might have a little bit more speed in the car and go out there for a third attempt, or are you pretty happy with where you're sitting?
Yeah, unfortunately, I was feeling really good about the weather around the time that my first attempt was, so that was kind of a bummer that I didn't really do too much practice on the qualifying set, so that's unfortunate. But yeah, coming out second attempt, obviously track was a little bit more rubbered in, a little bit slower, but we still were able to put in a decent lap.
So I've got to ask, with you being the first one on 2 attempts here, I mean, are you thinking about possibly going for a third attempt, maybe hoping the track's a little bit more rubbered in, or are you pretty content with what you got now?
I think I'm pretty happy with what I got. I'm unsure about, I haven't obviously raced with a lot of these guys in this league yet. I'm from over at ESRA IndyCar Series. I ran that last season. So I know a couple of guys in here, but kind of not trying to get too good of a qualifying position just so then, there's not too much pressure, I guess. But I think we're looking at possibly a top 10, which would be nice.
We look at these Indy cars out here, and we kind of liken this to super speedway qualifying and stock car races. And of course, a big part into getting the most out of your race car is how you get up through the gears and get up to speed coming off of pit road. I mean, is there certain areas of this access road off of turn 1 that you have kind of marked out of where you shift from gear to gear?
Not really. I was kind of just doing it mostly by feel. I haven't raced here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway much with this new IR18, but yeah, no, it was just kind of more feeling it out, trying not to push too hard, especially on that outlap, and yeah, the bumps on pit exit are going to be interesting for the race for sure. It looks like if the race setup is anything like the qualifying one.
All right, well, JW, good job on putting yourself up there inside of the top 10 currently, P8. We'll see if you decide to go out there for a third attempt, depending on circumstances here further on down during the course of the season festivities. But for now, good job. Nice to see you be able to get that 4-lap average in.
Thanks.
David Leclerc had a 226.870 as we mentioned, and right now he is trending a lot better. 3 laps in, 227.047. We'll see if he can keep it up there. He's borderline. What does the 4th lap put him at? Oh, just under the mark. 226.976. 24 one-thousandths of a second below the 227 mile per hour average.
And you got to be wondering, is he kind of kicking himself there where he was in an okay position, but now he's all the way back behind Bronson Stafford in top 20?
I wonder too, we talked about the last couple of times he's been at speedways. He is one of those guys that really lets it hang out in the corner, right up against the wall. And there was a point, I think it was his 2nd lap there on that run off of turn 2. He almost brushed the outside wall there. So I don't know if he maybe had to turn the car a little bit harder to the left, which killed his straightaway speed. Maybe even had to bail out of the throttle a little bit, which might have hurt his lap times.
I mean, that's what really hurts. It's not as much as damage. It's really mind games where, here's the thing, if you believe you hit the wall or you almost hit the wall, you're kind of in that panic mode and like, oh, I don't want to do that again. And it will kind of play mind games with you like, all right, I won't drive fully as deep as I was into this corner, and you'll be too conservative, and that will really mess over your lap.
I mentioned that you're not driving the car in these qualifying sessions. You're guiding the car. You're trying to point it the direction you want it to go and then just let the car do the rest. But a couple of drivers, maybe most of the drivers in the field, will actually counter steer the car off the corner, try and let it ride off the corner to that outside wall as far as they can go without actually hitting it, because that can translate into a couple miles per hour of straightaway speed.
That's the thing. a lot of these drivers would try anything to just gain a few more miles an hour. And again, just 1 or 2 miles an hour can make the difference.
So it looks like Alex Coates would have been the next driver to go out, and he would have been putting down his first lap time of the day. He is still not here, so it looks like we are currently waiting on Matt Wagner in the 99 to hop in for what would be his second lap time. He, much like David Leclerc, was not able to break into the 227 mile per hour bracket, had that moment off of turn 2 where he nearly looped it around. We'll see with if he's able to make any adjustments to have that car be a little bit steadier underneath him here for this second attempt.
I wonder if it really puts a chip on his shoulder where, listen, I mean, you don't want to come out in qualifying and spin and almost kind of wreck, and that doesn't look good upon you. But I mean, here's the thing: the track a little bit more rubbered up. Do you think he's just going to go a little bit harder, or be a little bit more conservative?
Well, I think you still go harder. I mean, you mentioned the fact all these drivers here tonight that are putting down lap times, they're locked into the field. So I think that you basically go out there at 110%. You can't drive scared, because if you do, you're not going to improve on that lap time. These lap times are all about momentum. You've got to keep that momentum up to be able to make sure that the fall off that we know is going to happen from lap 1 to lap 2, 2 to 3, and 3 to 4, that it's going to be minuscule. You want it to be by thousands. You don't want it to be by hundreds. And if you go out there and you drive conservative, that's not going to happen.
You're kind of hitting right the nail on the head. And again, you got to be looking here and just saying, man, I want to go out and I want to go get that pole. But I mean, just looking at some of the drivers in this field, I mean, you got to be a little bit realistic where, I mean, just let's kind of set the bar pretty high here. And Henry Bennett came very close, but I mean, kind of the gap between Bennett and Forsyth and down to Van de Sant and Evans, that's a pretty large gap in terms of kind of speed.
Yeah, Bledsoe has only made one attempt here tonight. He was he was 10th on the grid, but he was the 8th driver to go out there and lay down that lap time. So theoretically, he didn't really go out there on a very rubbered up track. Now, I'm going to ask you, because you would probably be able to know based off of the beginning of this session to now, has there been a big difference in temperature change? And if not, would the track be rubbered in, kind of maybe be causing a little bit of slickness going into these corners?
See, surprisingly, the track hasn't really been that much of a temperature shift. If anything, it's gotten cooler in the last few minutes, but I mean, I'm kind of looking at that rubber in the corners, and maybe that rubber is just a bit too hot and maybe just making some of these cars a little bit unsettled.
You saw right there when we showed you the driver info from Matt Wagner. Obviously, these drivers are doing 4 lap averages, so where you see them currently scored on the driver info is not in translation to where they are in the current grid. What you're seeing on the right side of your screen is where they're currently in with the 4 lap averages. But I think the one number that jumped out to me, it said currently 12th. That is showing the fastest lap time so far that each driver has laid down. The fact that he only has the 12th fastest lap time out there with a 39.4 or 549, that says to me right there that that first attempt was not what he wanted.
Realistically, that almost goes and kind of echoes a big statement here, because I mean, the guy who has pulled the fastest lap today of just straight line speed has to be Henry Bennett, who pulled a 39.470 on a single lap. Now, compare that to Robert Bledsoe, who pulled a 39.472. I mean, Henry really lost out due to the average rather than just fast laps.
2 1,000ths faster on the fastest lap, but if you look on the right side of your screen, 4 100ths difference between the two of them on the 4 lap average.
And you got to wonder, I mean, how big of a difference is just being consistent over 4 laps rather than 1 lap?
It's huge. There's no doubt about it. That's one of the unique things about IndyCar qualifying, because it's not you go out there 1 lap, you're done. You've got to keep that consistency, keep that momentum going during the course of 4 different laps. Now, one thing I'm noticing here with Matt Wagner, he's driving a little bit deeper into the corner than we've seen most drivers do here today. I've been observing that there's maybe about half a groove off that white line that most drivers seem to want to run through these corners, and he's right down there with the left sides on that white line. So with the track rubbering up, is it giving these drivers a little bit more of an option to drive it deeper into the turns?
I think easily so. I mean, just a few degrees can make a world of difference.
See what he sets his first lap time at this time by. and it looks like it's going to be a 39.583. That is about 400 slower than the fastest lap he put down today. So right now, this is not trending in the right direction if you're Matt Wagner.
And got to be wondering if he's kind of seeing those times in the back of his head. I mean, here's the thing. A lot of these drivers, anyone really in this session has a unique advantage over someone actually qualifying for the Indy 500. And the fact that they can instantly see their lap times easily on their screen or on the steering wheel. And that's the thing where, I mean, you can instantly evaluate yourself, and I'm going to tell you, your harshest critic is you. You're looking at that time and you're criticizing, well, I could have dove it deeper in this corner. I could have turned in a little bit deeper here. And you got to be wondering if that's going to affect your future laps as well.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, because a lot of drivers don't want to get inside their heads. They don't want to know what the end result is until they've taken the checkered flag. But point you just made there, if you take a look and see your lap times relative between each lap, you can then kind of gauge if a mistake was made and how much it hurt you. That can then play into your decision if you want to go out there for, in Matt Wagner's case, a third try.
But I'll go ahead and hit you with another one, which is obviously if you're seeing your lap times, and obviously with Matt Wagner, his lap time got a little bit slower this time of it being the second lap. I mean, you could easily overreact, and you could make too big of a change that will even hurt you even more.
Well, Matt Wagner did improve. His first time out was a 226.897. He now has jumped up to 9th on the board, 227.235 for his 4-lap average. So a huge jump there. I believe that's about 0.4 of a second. He gained, well, 3.5 of a second right there between his first and second attempt. And that will put him just on the cusp inside of the Fast 9.
Looks like Nick DeGroot might be coming out to take another shot at it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Nick DeGroot would have been 7th as things stand right now. He feels he can get a little bit more out of that race car. 227.303 will be thrown into the rubbish heap, and we'll see if he can either improve or if he'll be slower here on this next run.
If it's a matter of pride. I mean, being totally honest, I mean, obviously no one wants to be shown up in qualifying, and, you know, there is a certain kind of, I'd say a little bit of ego base where, hey, you're the fastest guy in Indianapolis. I mean, trust me, everyone wants that title.
Before we get to Nick DeGroot, it's going to be Gary Corley. It's going to go out there for his second attempt. Corley right now sitting 22nd on the board. Well, actually, I believe he is sitting 20th on the board, as we have not removed the previous lap times from David Leclerc and Matt Wagner. So he would be 20th right now on the grid, trying to improve on a 226.519.
And just looking at Garrett Corley, I mean, he was one of those guys that we saw go out early, and we kind of had high hopes for, but we realized that, and I think he realized it too, with just how early he was going out, he was going to have to take another shot at it.
Garrett Corley, I believe, was the second driver to take time earlier on in this session. So much like David Leclerc, went out there on a very green racetrack and kind of set the stage for some of the faster cars later on, like Maleska III, Henry Bennett, and the upcoming Nick DeGroot.
And I really wonder here, I mean, how much is he going to gain?
Oh, that was really wide there off of turn 2. They had to turn that car to the left. The case of the car getting tight or the car getting loose, to be honest. The Indy cars kind of have a little bit different of a look depending on how the car is handling. Usually if they're tight, the car goes straight, doesn't want to turn. Usually if they're loose, they go really wide off of the corner. So I guess that was a case of the car getting loose. And we've seen here tonight, if a car steps out above that dark gray, those rear tires don't want to take them. We've seen a couple of spins as a result.
I mean, realistically, just look at these cars. They're almost like a dart going for a dartboard, and obviously you don't want your dart kind of sliding off to the side. I mean, these things are made for high-speed precision, and they can't really deal with sliding all that well.
As Gary Corley's coming around here for what should be midway through his qualifying effort. A guy that improved between his first run and the second run was Matt Wagner. Let's see if we can talk with him. Hey, Matt, it's up in the FRM booth again. You got us?
Yeah, got a copy.
All right, so you went out there, you improved. You're sitting ninth on the board right now. You made up there into the 227 mile per hour average bracket. Feel there with the adjustments you made? Do you think you can get a little bit more out of it, or are you pretty good for the night?
I think I can get a little bit more out of it. There was a couple turns where I screwed up really bad. I think I can get down in the fours. It is possible.
So let me go ahead and ask, just from a driver's perspective, what's different from the track when you qualified earlier from when you qualified now?
I had my weight checker too high, which it caused the car to get really loose, and that's how you saw me come off of turn number 4 in a heaping mess. Tighten the car up, it handled a hell of a lot better. So.
All right, well, that car certainly did improve, that's for sure. Up right now inside of the top 9. We'll look forward to seeing if you can improve a couple more spots here going up for that third attempt. Good luck.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, guys.
Now, Wagner has not yet put himself into the queue for a second attempt, and with the list that we gave you before, no new names have been added. We've got DeGroot coming up here in just a moment. James Watson will be looking to go out there and actually complete an entire 4-lap stint. And then Alex Van de Sant, who right now sits 4th on the board, he's going to try and go out there and make a run for the pole position as well. Gary Corley crosses the line. He's going to run a 226.660 that will improve over his previous lap time of a 5:19, but I do not believe that that's going to improve him any higher on the current grid.
I realistically wonder if some of these guys going out and improving their positions are going to force some of the guys who are further back in the field to make a second run if they're not all that comfortable about making a second run.
You got to wonder about guys here like Forsyth, Henry Bennett, Robert Mileska III. The fact that Alex Van de Sant, as well as Nick DeGroot, have thrown their name into the ring to go out for a second attempt. I mean, did they kind of think, well, that's going to hold up, I'm done for the night, and then they come back the following day and realize, wait, what happened? I was on the front row.
That's the thing where it's confidence in what you believe here to thing. And I wonder if Mileska and Henry Bennett are just confident with what they got and they just don't want to take another shot at it. Now, seeing Mileska come out or Henry Bennett come out and say, yeah, I want to do one more shot at it, that would really shock me.
So Nick DeGroot was the 5th driver to go out there and take time in this qualifying session. The first lap time he laid down was a 39.558. We're going to use him as a template here, as he's now going to be going out on track about nearly an hour and a half later than his first attempt. See what the difference is between the first lap time on this run as opposed to the first lap time that he ran on his first attempt.
It really looks like he's aggressively attacking the line, but he's doing the wise thing of not getting right on it or below it to really not lose any traction.
See him kind of run the middle of the back straightaway there, not right up against the wall. Now brings it up a little bit higher for his entry into turn 3. Is there a particular way to approach the front and back straightaway to get the maximum speed? Do you run it right up against the wall? Do you kind of skew it down to the inside wall, like down here towards the pit wall? Or do you just try and keep that thing as straight as possible no matter where it comes off of the corner?
It's more or less the idea of trying to keep it as smooth as possible and just letting the car naturally take its course. I mean, obviously, if you're trying to turn all the way out to the wall, you're going to be losing a little bit of speed there. But just looking at how the car naturally exits the corner, it's naturally pulling to the outside wall. So it makes sense to run it all the way to the outside wall, run it all the way down, and then almost naturally go all the way down the track to try and kind of make the corner as short as possible.
Nick DeGroot was on the front row last season, starting on the outside of Matt Wagner in position number 2. Right now, would be slotted to roll off from the grid in 7th place. So we mentioned a 39.558 for his first lap on his first attempt. This time around, Nick DeGroot is going to clock in at a 39.511. So he gained about 4 100ths between the first lap this run and the first lap on his first attempt.
That makes me wonder. I just wonder how much he's going to gain from this.
Right now, he would be slotted in for a 2:27.785, but we know that the lap times are going to fall off. And on these last couple of attempts, we've seen from the first lap to the fourth lap that the fall off has been anywhere from 2 to 3 tenths. So right now, it'll be interesting to see if Nick DeGroot is able to keep himself up there in the 2:27.6s after his second lap. 39.620. He now drops to a 2:27.471. So he just dropped from top of the board to fifth in the standings after his second lap.
Regardless, it is a bit of an improvement, but you just wonder, I don't think he can get that much back on the last two.
Right now, about a tenth and a half faster. Actually, no, a full tenth faster than his last attempt. It's the line this time with a 30.591. That now puts him at a 2:27.424, so still up there about a tenth faster than his previous attempt. Right now, tracking sixth, and he was seventh out here for the second attempt.
I'm seeing he's not aggressively tacking the bottom of the tracks like he was in the first two laps.
And it's definitely showing. It looks like if he's able to hold on where he is, he's only going to improve one position in the starting grid. Coming down for his fourth and final lap. It'll be a 39.588, I do believe. 587. 227.405. So a full tenth and 2/1000ths faster than what he ran on his first attempt. It's only going to gain him one spot right now, P6 for the defending champion.
I mean, it's worth it, I guess, at the end of the day. But I don't know. I think I'd prefer to be on the inside of the racetrack.
I agree with you on that. I'd want to be on the inside of the racetrack as well, because if someone makes a mistake underneath you, you're going to be the one that goes up into the outside wall. And, we talked with AJ Hobson earlier on tonight, how he was caught up in a few incidents that were not of his own making due to some hard racing, and subsequently didn't get the finish he wanted in last year's Indy 500. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where somebody else makes a mistake and you're going to be the one that pays for that mistake. Next driver that is scheduled to go out is going to be James Watson. Of course, Watson went out there, took the green flag, but had trouble coming around out of, I believe it was turn 4 on his final lap, could not make it back to the start-finish line, and subsequently his 4-lap average under the 200 mile per hour bracket. I don't know if he is currently here or not, does not look like it. And it also looks like the next driver that was in the listing to go out there, Alex Van de Sant, which was going to be an interesting one as he was 4th on the board currently. Looks like he is not in the queue right now either.
Going back to that whole starting on the outside thing, as much as you trust that guy on the inside, you just don't. It's not safe to. Looks like Nick DeGroot is signing up to go again.
Yes, he is.
That is a bold take. I don't know. I mean, after you've run 4 laps, is it really something that you can immediately look at saying, yep, I can do better here?
Well, I mean, we talk about the self-adjuster that the drivers have in the car. Maybe he feels that there's some slight little bit of an adjustment he can make that can gain him a little bit more. Now, just based off of his first attempt to the second attempt, yes, he gained a tenth. In order to sit on the pole, though, he's got to gain 2.5 tenths of a second. I mean, that is a huge ask, but kind of see if he can get himself up there, maybe into the top 5. There he goes, back out onto the racetrack. We'll see if he's got anything more to be able to prove here to get himself just maybe a couple spots higher in the grid.
Maybe he heard us. Maybe he just said, "Oh man, I really don't want to start in the outside lane." So he's getting another shot to try to get on the inside.
Rule number 1, never listen to the commentators.
Well, I mean, as long as he just doesn't go out and back it into the fence, I think he's going to be fine. I mean, he's reasonably shown speed to be in the top 10 without very much trouble.
Well, I'm wondering if maybe he realized what you were pointing out, that he really wasn't attacking the corners there, especially on the 3rd and 4th laps of this run. Might be an adjustment that he'll make here on this 3rd attempt.
See, now I'm seeing a little bit more attack in that bottom lane there. that catches my eye just a little bit of, how much is he really going to push that issue? Because again, you can hook those tires underneath that line, but when you start hooking it underneath the line, you run the risk of the back end stepping out.
I'm going to assume, I'm not 100% certain, you can correct me on this if you know the answer, Alex Van de Sande did put himself in the queue. That might have been a preemptive move, just in case some of his other competition might have leapfrogged him in the running order. I would think that when it comes time for that next driver in the queue, they can actually waive putting the, take themselves out of the queue and keep the lap time that they've got.
Yeah, I don't think that Alex really thought that far ahead, but also you got to think maybe something came out for Alex where he originally wanted to go out and make another attempt and just realized that maybe he just didn't have time to.
Now, he would be rolling off 4th for the Indianapolis 500 this Saturday. The season finale for Season 3 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series presented by HyperX, and we here at Flatout Racing Network will be bringing you coverage of that 200-lapper. The green flag going to fly at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you guys will join us as we are setting the grid for said Indianapolis 500 here tonight, and Nick DeGroot now going to put the first lap time down on the board for his 3rd attempt here tonight. We'll do a little bit of comparison to his lap times in attempt number 2 to attempt number 3, see if there's any improvement or maybe any disprovement between attempt number 2 and attempt number 3.
See, I really wonder if maybe he's just kind of... I wonder if brain fade kind of starts to set in after you do 2 consecutive Q runs.
Now, he is not faster than what he ran on the second attempt. First lap on the second attempt was a 39.511. He is 7/1000 slower right now with a 39.518. So definitely not going in the correct direction is Nick DeGroot. We'll see if he can improve on the second and third lap. Second lap, improve. 39.620. Compare it now to a 39.567. So he, at least for the time being, is trending to be up inside of the top 5.
So that really makes the question, how far can you push it here? And if you're going to qualify inside the top 5, are you going to be comfortable with that or just say, hey, let me take another run?
Right now, hi Nick DeGroot, nobody else has entered into the queue. We know that Charles Teed is going to be taking an attempt later on this evening, but we don't know yet where the 5 will be starting for the 500. Right now, Nick DeGroot did drop a spot to 4th, currently trending still in the 227.5s. Only 2 drivers outside of Nick DeGroot currently have gotten themselves up in the 227.5s. Only 2 drivers up in the 227.6s, and that's currently your front row.
Still looking here. I did notice that Cohen Evans just connected to the server, so I'm not sure if he's going to take another run here.
Evans right now 6th on the board as Nick DeGroot hits the start-finish line, 39.596 for his final lap. And that should put him still in the 227.4 area, I do believe. Yes, it will slot him 5th now on the grid. So he was 7th, moved up to 6th, now moves up to 5th for the starting lineup.
All he needs to do is do 4 more runs, and I think he's good to go.
Yes, trending up towards that pole position.
But just look at the steady improvement he's had, where, realistically, he has improved every time he went out, and honestly, it seems like he keeps learning from his last approaches. It's a really expensive test session, but, it's helping.
I'm wondering if other drivers might be noticing that. Matt Wagner just got himself added back to the queue. He'll go out for a 3rd attempt. Right now, Wagner sitting 10th on the board, and if Nick DeGroot is able to pick up a 10th each one of those 2 attempts, from the second attempt to the 3rd attempt, maybe Matt Wagner can be able to do the same. He talked about it. He had his setting there for the adjustment on the first run completely wrong. It felt a lot better on the second run. Maybe do a little bit of tinkering, do a little bit more adjusting, and see if he can pick up another couple of 10ths.
And that's the thing. Obviously, that's the problem where DeGroot's gotten some of these guys thinking like, maybe I can kind of mimic what he's doing. Maybe I can ask him what he's doing and see that I can replicate it. But that's kind of a dangerous road to follow where, you can easily get yourself out of a really good position and put yourself back into a really bad position.
I mentioned that Matt Wagner is 10th on the board. He's actually inside the Fast 9 in 9th place. Nick DeGroot currently is holding 2 positions there. He is 5th, Evans is 6th, Peterson 7th, and Miller is up in 8th with Wagner in 9th. Nick DeGroot's second attempt has not been taken, currently off of the average mile per hour board. So Wagner, we'll see if he is going to go out there for another attempt in the 99. He's still yet to connect to the server. Might be kind of still weighing the options here.
Yeah, there you go. It just looks like he's just connected here. So it looks like he's going to do one more attempt out.
So Matt Wagner trying for one last-ditch effort to see if he can be a back-to-back pole sitter for the Indianapolis 500. On this run, he's got to find himself a little bit more than 0.4 of a second on his 4-lap average. Wagner was one of the first guys out there on the track during the start of qualifying. He then went out for a second attempt, greatly improved between the first and second attempts, and right now trying to see if he can move his way a little bit further up inside of the Fast 9 here tonight.
You kind of wonder if some of the anticipation that some of the drivers are having to seeing if their spots are really going to get bumped out here, because, I mean, I'm looking at more or less, I'm sure Matt Wagner is kind of looking at his top 10 position thinking, man, am I going to get bumped out of the top 10?
You got some drivers that were really fast with the track conditions the way they were early on in this one. Jim Herrick, AJ Hobson, Jim Brooks, they all ran in the 227-1s, and they went out, I believe, somewhere between slots 8 to 11. So still relatively green track for those drivers. Not a whole lot of rubber laid down, and certainly you would think that if they went out with conditions the way they are now, they could maybe pick up another 10th or 2, move up into the 227-2s or maybe even the 227-3s. So yeah, Matt Wagner might be trying to do a little bit of a preemptive move here to give himself a bit of a cushion between those guys, just in case they show up here later on tonight. We're covering the first 3 hours of this qualifying session, covering all these drivers going out for at least their first attempts and some of their second and third attempts here, but the server's open till midnight. There's still 3 hours of qualifying left for drivers to be able to make the decision, do I want to go out there and attempt again? And of course, a number of drivers that haven't even taken time here tonight, a few of them that we know will be later on this evening, still haven't even figured out where they're going to be at the end of the night inside of the Indy 500 starting grid.
So it's Rick Revan. It looks like he also connected back here, so I wonder if he's going to get himself lined up for another attempt.
Actually, Rick never put down a first attempt.
Oh.
He was not here when his time slot came up, so we're actually going to get to see the driver of the 2 machine go out there for the first time tonight. I believe he's going to be going out immediately after Matt Wagner completes his 3rd attempt.
And you got to wonder what Wagner's thinking. Like, I'm pretty sure he's got the same fear in the back of his head like we've been talking about where, man, hey, am I going to kind of worsen my position here? Am I going to have an uphill battle, or am I going to have a kind of a Nick DeGroot kind of situation where I can really improve my situation?
Matt Wagner right now sitting 9th on the starting lineup. That would be on the outside of row 3 for the Indy 500 later on this week. Trying to improve on what I believe was a 227... What was a 227.3, if I recall correctly. No, I'm sorry, a 227.2. 211, I think, is what he had on his previous attempts. So we'll see what he's going to be able to do here. This is his up-to-speed lap here. And getting ready to go on to the clock here for attempt number 3.
And just looking here, I mean, you can see he looks a little bit faster. Looks can be deceiving, though.
See what the improvement's going to be. Right now, the number 1 lap, the money lap, if you will, to set the trend. Last attempt out, ran a 39.565. We'll see what the improvement's going to be. Will it be by thousands? Will it be by hundreds? Will it be by tenths? We'll wait and see here, as I believe he's, right now, this is actually still his get up to speed lap. He will now go on the clock here. This will be his first lap of this 4-lap average.
I mean, he is
what
right
the driver
right
sees here. Let's follow inside of this number 99. Watch the hand movement and the entry into these corners.
And you just got to think, look at how much that halo really just inhibits your vision so much where if you tuck up right behind a car, it is almost invisible in front of you.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, that arrow screen there. I mean, like, how much of a difference visibility is it with the arrow screen on these cars as opposed to over on the DW12s?
Absolutely. The DW12s only have a small little bar that pops up at the front of the car that kind of protects from the debris and small kind of flying things. But looking at the arrow screen, I mean, just look at the glare in the window. And that's just enough to throw you off a little bit if you're trying to look to make a move.
Matt Wagner is headed in the right direction. He just jumped up to 8th on the board for fastest lap tonight with a 39.520. That is 4/10, or make that 400ths, faster than his first lap on attempt number 2.
I gotta think he's obviously seeing this. He's seeing in the right direction now. The question, can he adjust correctly for the last 2 laps?
5.82 was his second lap. This time around, 5.76. So only about 6/1000ths of a second improvement, but still, as we've seen here tonight, thousandths improvement can translate to 2 or 3 positions in the starting lineup.
Man, he is just like a rocket down the back straightaway.
Right now, he is trending to be around the same area as Alex Van de Sant, and Van de Sant was 4th on the grid before Wagner went out here for this attempt. So he is trending at least to be up inside of the top 5 if he can get this momentum up on the completion of this 3rd lap and onto his 4th and final lap.
And just waiting to see an update here.
39.609. That is going to be 16/1000ths faster than his 3rd lap. So he still is trending in the right direction, and right now still holding on to 3rd place.
You gotta wonder, where is he really gonna settle out? I think he might be close to maybe even beating Nick de Groot.
Right now, Nick de Groot with a 4.61, Wagner with a 4.60. To come down to this lap time here, I think in order to hold off Nick de Groot, he's going to have to run a 5.8. He runs a 6.3. So Matt Wagner actually going to drop a couple more spots there on that 4th and final lap, 227.366. Now that is faster, almost a 10th and a half faster than the lap time he put down on his 2nd attempt. However, I believe it's only going to gain him 1 spot in the starting grid, from 9th now up to 8th.
You know he has to not be too pleased with that. I mean, just looking at how those previous laps were just kind of adding up to be something, I mean, within the top 5 even.
It's really interesting here on this longer, the longer that the session has gone on, how the 3rd and 4th lap, they've been the laps where the fall off has been tremendous. We know these drivers have a lot more grip going into these corners with the rubber that's laid down. I'm wondering, with carrying so much speed into the corner, though, if that is causing the tire temperatures to rise a lot quicker now than they did earlier on in the session, thus how much fall off we're seeing on laps 3 and 4.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of throwing it back and forth, just thinking about it here, and I almost wonder if, since the tires and the track heated up, if the fact that it's so much faster in the first 2 laps, or is it just wearing out the tire even faster where you have to adjust even more aggressively for those final 2?
Wagner was trending in the right direction. He put down his fastest lap of the session as the first lap there on this 3rd attempt, but it just kept going down, down, down from there. 2 to 3 positions every lap that he ran. Now, he did run, as we said, faster than his 2nd attempt, and it was by leaps and bounds. A couple of those laps were actually hundredths faster than the laps he laid down on the 2nd attempt. But as we see, with the tire fall off and the average miles per hour, what was looking like could have been a top 5 run midway through that run translated to a run just inside of the top 10, and right now slots him in the 8th position, still in the Fast 9, 1 position improvement. But that now puts him in the middle line for the 3 wide start, the middle of row 3.
I mean, just looking, looks like Nick de Groot also commented, it doesn't seem like anyone's touching Rob.
Yeah, Matt, definitely Maleska the third, he set the bar. He was one of the first ones out there. He was the 7th driver to take time here today. Henry Bennett not too far behind. Those two, when they jumped up in the 227.6s, nobody else has been able to come close. Looks like right now, nobody else has added their name to the queue. We're waiting to see if Rick Ravone actually is going to go out there, and indeed he is. So here you go. You were talking about getting the opportunity to observe him in another Indy 500 race and just how much speed he brought to the table. I don't know. We're talking about Maleska holding this pole position. We don't know what Ravone has.
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking at that, and obviously I've got high hopes for him, and I'm kind of seeing it, and I know how fast he was the other day, but I mean, this is a different setup, different track conditions. I'm kind of thinking here.
He is on pit road, waiting for the league admins to give him the go-ahead to head out, and there he goes. So we will see Rick Ravone, one-off driver, first start of the season here in this upcoming Saturday's Indy 500, and we'll see where he's going to slot himself in with a very gripped up track. We have had a total of, I believe, 26 drivers out there. That's including drivers going out for multiple attempts here that have taken to the track. So a lot of rubber laid down here. We'll see if that rubber is going to translate to a lightning fast lap time for this 2 machine.
He's going a little bit slower than I expect him in these corners. I mean, I've been seeing, like I said, I saw Nick DeGroot coming out of 4 about 2:10 on his opening lap.
Well, I mean, remember, he's coming here to take another circuit around. This is going to be his warm-up lap, and maybe he's of the assumption that if you go hard immediately off pit road, that's going to raise the tire temps up by the time you come around for your first time lap, so might be trying to keep them as cool as possible.
I can kind of see that, but there's a certain point where, I mean, obviously you got to get in that first lap, and you've got to kind of race that fast. I don't know.
All right, so if we look here at Nick DeGroot, Matt Wagner, some of these guys that just went out moments ago, their first laps were in the 39.5-second bracket. In order for Ravone to have a shot at the pole, his first lap has to be in the 39.4s. We'll see what it's going to be here. And it's going to clock in at a 39.942. That was his warm-up lap. Hold on, that was his warm-up lap. That wasn't the first attempt.
Scared.
Okay, yep, okay, so that was his warm-up lap, which actually is faster than a lot of the warm-up laps, too. Most of the warm-up laps coming to the start-finish line have been in the mid-40s. So that's a pretty fast warm-up lap. We'll see what this first lap translates to as he's now on the clock.
I mean, that could have some adverse effects. I mean, obviously, having that warm-up lap so fast, that does kind of hurt your tires just a tad bit.
39.496 for Rick Ravone. It does. You're right. And Van de Sant right now sits 5th on the board. That is about 200ths off the fastest lap of the session laid down by Henry Bennett.
But easily one of the fastest of those laps.
And maybe one of the fastest of the opening laps that we've seen since we saw Craig Forsyth come out onto the racetrack.
Going back and seeing here how his second lap's going to end up.
39.596, so a full 10th off of his opening lap.
But it still is within range and still a little bit faster than Covey Moore. And Covey was one of the fastest of that opening section.
Right now, he would be, after that second lap, currently trending at a 227.583, which would put him 3rd on the board. As we've seen with the fall off here, expecting he's going to drop a couple more positions. So right now, I would say projected he might be looking for a 5th or 6th position starting spot.
He looks a bit unsettled at a 4.
That time he was actually faster on the 3rd lap, so I wonder if he made a mistake on lap number 2, because he was actually 100th quicker on lap 3.
That already puts him inside the top 5, so that already catches a little bit of attention. Wonder if Nick DeGroot's going to pop back in and do one more round.
It's a 227.510 for Rick Ravone. In order to stay ahead of Alex Van de Sant, he's got to clock in at something better than a 39.602 to hang on to that 4th position. Let's see what he gets around this time. Can he keep it in the high 39.5s perhaps? No, 39.611. I think he's just going to be a couple of thousandths below Van de Sant. Wow, that actually dropped him a lot more than I expected. That dropped him from 4th all the way down to 7th with a 227.436 average.
That just shows you how killer those last 2 laps could be. But, that almost adds extra emphasis on the first 2 laps to see if you can find something that no one else has. See if you get a little bit extra speed in those first 2 laps to make the last 2 laps a little bit less of a hit.
I mean, that's huge. You wouldn't think a lap time that's only 9/1000 slower than the driver he was around after the 3rd lap would put him down 3 spots between laps 3 to 4. That's just, I would say, the beauty and the curse of the 4-lap average, because it translates into so much more when you put all 4 laps together.
Easily.
I believe as he's coasting down pit road, we can actually dial up Rick Ravone and see what he thought about his first attempt here tonight at Indy. It's Matt and Seth up in the upper end booth. You got us?
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, we're doing good. Man, that car looked really fast. We were kind of thinking it was trending to be up there inside of the top 5, but laps 3 and 4, we saw with that 4-lap average, it just kind of started tapering off a little bit more than we expected. You right now sit in the 7th position. Were you able to learn anything there in that first run? Might go out there, do a second attempt, pick up a couple more positions.
Yeah, I think there's a chance I might do that because I actually blew lap 1. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect as far as the the roll bars, the weight jacker. I just went into this thing blind because I was kind of invited at the last minute. I says, "Oh heck yeah, Dark Horse guys and these other great racers, Nick DeGroot and all of them." I says, "Yeah, I'd love to be a part of this Indianapolis 500." But I didn't get a chance to practice, so I kind of went in blind. I think now I know what to expect. I mean, it was white knuckle all the way, but the car felt very smooth on the last couple laps because I made a couple of adjustments. On lap 1 in turn 4, I caught the white line and got just a little bit sideways and had to breathe it. So that definitely cost me the momentum for the rest of the run. But yeah, I might give it another try in a little while.
And just kind of seeing, I noticed you kind of wiggled at least a little bit out of 3 on your, I believe, your 3rd lap. Was that just a little bit of the car being unsettled, or?
I'm not sure. I didn't feel the car wiggle on lap 3. I dialed in some negative weight jacker, and it actually felt smoother than it did the first couple laps. But like I said, I didn't really know what to expect, so I had to dial it in as we went. It felt smoother on the last 2 laps than it did on the first 2, that's for sure.
Rick, obviously you weren't here for when your time slot came up, so you went out on a very rubbered up racetrack. Do you think that was an advantage for you here to be able to get an idea of what adjustments to make for this second attempt, or would you have liked to have gone out there maybe with a slightly greener racetrack?
I'm not really sure how that whole thing would have played out, to be honest with you. I just got done running in another league. We did a 45-lapper Indianapolis road course. I actually got lucky and won that race. So I was just coming in completely cold as far as the ovals are concerned. As far as the Rubberton racetrack, I'm not really sure. It may have given a little bit of advantage, and maybe it'll help, down the line as we wait. Maybe the weather will get a little bit cooler as well. That might help too. So we're just going to have to wait and see.
Well, that car looks fast. We'll have to see on the second attempt if he can maybe put up inside of the top 5. You trended really well there, put down the 5th fastest lap time that we've seen so far here tonight with, as you said, no practice. So we'll look forward to seeing if you can improve your position for the 500 later on this week.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So we're looking here to see if anybody else has put themselves into the queue. Doesn't really look like anybody has. Again, as we know, there are a couple of drivers that still have to go out and put down their first lap time of the night. Charles Teed will be doing it later on tonight. Possibly as well Eric Schaus. It's going to be interesting to see how he stacks up. We know he's got a lot of speed when it comes to these bigger racetracks. And then, of course, as we just talked with, Rick Ravone looked really fast there on his first attempt, and we'll see if with maybe a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of adjustments, if he'll be able to improve, maybe get himself up there inside of the top 5. But again, as we mentioned, we are only halfway through, a little more than halfway through the qualifying session here tonight. These drivers still have another 3 hours to be able to go out and make either their first, second, or in some of these drivers' cases, 3rd attempt of the night to either improve or maybe maintain their spots in the starting lineup. But that's going to be concluding our coverage here on Flatout Racing Network. Right now, though, I'm almost wondering if it's set in stone here, Matt. Maleska III, Henry Bennett, the Indy 500 front row.
Easily, because they've really kind of set themselves in a class of their own. Easily faster than Forsyth, Van de Sant, and the Groot. But I wouldn't be surprised maybe see Matt Wagner take another chance at it, even though the ninth place, the 99 car kind of sounds cool. But also, I mean, Charles Teed, I expect him to be somewhere in the top 5, if not even the top 10.
We saw Nick DeGroot go out there for the second and third runs. Each run, he improved a tenth of a second, so I'm not necessarily certain yet if Craig Forsyth has secured the outside of the front row there with the 3-wide start we're going to have in the Indy 500. He might still be a little bit under the microscope for Rick Ravone if Ravone's able to improve his lap time by about a tenth on his second attempt, but definitely, I think this is definitely a good run for Craig Forsyth, and the fact that we talked about the up and down season he's had, he's now coming into a track that he is the defending winner at, and with good starting track position, whether it be third place or at least up inside the top 5, maybe a little bit of a statement of, hey, I'm going for back-to-back, you're going to have to go through me.
I mean, you heard him say that, I mean, this Indy 500 win, if he managed to win it again, would mean so much more just because of the competition that's in here.
And of course, we talked with Robert Maleska III, already the champion, 10 wins on the season. Nobody can mathematically touch him for that championship trophy, but he wants the icing on the cake. He wants to be able to say he was a winner of the Indianapolis 500 as well and get race win trophy and championship trophy all in one lovely package. We'll see if he'll be able to do it. This coming Saturday, Flatout Racing Network is going to have the call at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we're going to bring you all 200 laps here from this historic 2.5-mile speedway in Indianapolis, Indiana. Matt, it's been a great one here for qualifying. Kind of a little bit surprising to watch how these lap times taper off, where we kind of think we know where the driver's going to be. All of a sudden, he's about 3 positions lower than our projected area. But these drivers have brought a lot to the table here tonight. We've got a lot of valuable information to carry into the 500 as well.
But this also adds so much more pressure to, I mean, making sure you perform, and just imagine how some of these drivers would feel. Remember with the previous Indy 500, just a lap 1 incident where you may just spin off a turn 1. That could be so monumental to some of these guys.
Definitely could. Well, we're going to be finding out the full official starting lineup, all 33 drivers that were lined up in tonight's qualifying session. Even the ones that didn't take time will be locked into the 500 this Saturday. It'll be interesting to see who's going to be able to cap off Season 3 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series with a victory. Matt, it's been a great qualifying session here tonight. Looking forward to you joining me in the booth as well on Saturday. Thanks for joining me here tonight for a very interesting qualifying.
I'm looking quite forward to it, just seeing how much the endurance factor of the Indy 500 really plays into the finish of the race.
Endurance, that is a key word. These drivers are going to have themselves mentally focused, as it's going to be a long 200 laps for them this Saturday afternoon. But thank you all for tuning in here tonight to the qualifying session. Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage, and we'll see you guys for the big main event, the season finale, the Indianapolis 500, presented by HyperX this Saturday. We'll see you at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us on Friday night as we're going to be bringing you coverage of the first race of the playoffs at Chicagoland for the Backfire Sim Racing. But for Matthew Rodriguez, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.